Hello, Mr. Bossman. Hello, Rusty. Hello, Mr. Hannah. Good afternoon. Hello, B. I get on, and the first thing I see is Ted walking away. Yeah, I forgot to turn on my light over here, so I don't want it to be too dark. This is the Theodore Schubert Friday live stream. Let's have an enjoyable Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. And let's try to keep everything as fun and enjoyable as possible. Long time no see, fellow Christian Crusader. Hello, Zen Master. I think I remember you. Yes, I think you are the Canadian guy who lives in Poland, if I'm not mistaken. This music is way too loud. Lower this music down a little bit. Hope you guys are having a good Friday so far, and we will try our best to make an enjoyable Friday live stream. We'll be talking about geopolitics, a little bit on the American election, and technology, a little bit on technology. Talking about also more so on geopolitics, which is, I mean, when it comes to politics, geopolitics is the main focus on this channel, if you guys have not noticed already. But I spent about 4 hours today kind of prepping for this stream. Prepping for these streams can be a little bit tedious at times, because a lot of times when you go to Google News, when you go to these sites to get the main updates on the news, a lot of it is just surfacey stuff. And a lot of stuff is just completely irrelevant. You'll see these headlines on climate change and green energy policy or something like that, and it's just like, who cares? It's all pretty boring. So a lot of times I find myself going to the foreign news pages, Russian news pages, or I'll go to Polish media, French media, Japanese media. I'll go to these various sites and I'll see stories that you can't find at the surface level in the English-speaking media. And by surface level, I mean just going onto sites like Google News and seeing what the daily brief is. Many times it's just stories that people will forget by tomorrow, or will forget in a few hours. It's all just very very tedious stuff. Theo with Geo, I like that. That's nice. Hello, Sotiris Bagonis. Hello, Guts. So, yeah, finding news can be a very tedious job. That's why if you're a blogger, if you're a serious blogger and you're posting very quick blurbs on the news, it looks easy and it's simple. It's not complicated work, but it does have its challenges in the sense that it is tedious to go through and comb through the nitty-gritty world of the news cycle, because a lot of times you have really interesting stories that do not pop up immediately just by doing a simple Google search. You have to go to various websites or go to certain international media outlets to find stories that people just aren't really talking about. You gotta have different sources, yeah. I wish it was as simple as just going onto Google News and typing in something, or just going onto Google News and just looking at the stories they have on the front page. Happy Friday, absolutely. Is it cold? We're now near in North Carolina. Yeah, I hear there's a lot of horrible things happening in North Carolina, now Florida. Middle Eastern sources are also very interesting. Yeah, Middle Eastern sources, Turkish sources, absolutely. El Anadolu Press is a really good website. But it can be difficult. It can be tedious to go through the news cycle. Yeah. And sometimes you go onto, let's say, Polish media, and you're searching for stories, and it's just like, what the hell is this? I never heard about this. You know, for example, Poland talking about striking Russia Uh, it's just like you don't find that just by going on to Google News. You got to really put some effort into finding stories like that, really controversial, heated stories like that. I debated someone who said that Third Reich were Christians despite their eugenics and obvious propaganda methods, which he doubled down on denying when I told him about it. Yeah, I've seen this sort of phenomenon before. You have these Christians who are pro-Hitler. I remember years ago, I was going to this very trad Catholic parish, ultra trad, traditional Latin mass, beautiful, beautiful chanting, very nice chanting. And there was a woman there who, she was very pro-Hitler, and her and I ended up getting into a conversation, an argument over this, actually. And she spoke fluent German because she had lived in Germany. She did work in Germany for a number of years, and she told me that that she loved Hitler, and I told her about eugenics and how Darwinism is actually in Mein Kampf. And she just didn't care. She just said, well, if Hitler invaded Poland, he must have had a good reason to do so. That's what she told me. You see this sort of thing in the trad world. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy, guys. I watched your video on euthanasia and made me feel outraged. We have a natural aversion to death because death is born from man's sin, and sin is outside of the natural. That's correct. Yeah. Somebody made a really good point in the comment section in that video. They said that death is a way for us to get closer to God, and it is. Death is, when you know your death is near, then you start becoming more religious because you start thinking about the afterlife. So, for example, if you have a criminal who is a heinous criminal and he has done terrible, terrible crimes, telling him that he's going to be spending the rest of his life in prison is not really going to make him think about the afterlife. It's just going to make him think about surviving in prison. If you tell him you're going to be executed in this number of weeks, he's going to start thinking about the afterlife, and you're actually helping that person. So definitely death is a way to get closer to God, or the knowledge of your death is. So by saying someone who's close to death that we should just kill you now, I think it goes really against the whole purpose of our knowledge of our near death, or the knowledge that we have that death is nigh. A lot of Nazis are in Catholic rights like SSPX because they believe that Hitler was trying to stop the globalists. That's right. There's a number of reasons as to why trad Catholics get into Nazism. A lot of it has to do with their view of history. So, for example, trad Catholics are very much so fixated on communism. They like to talk a lot about communism, the Soviet Union, and how the Vatican is being undermined by communists, which is to a certain extent is true, right? You do have Catholic communists, especially in Latin America, with the whole liberation theology thing. It's just crazy. So they go the complete opposite of the mainstream Vatican position, and they'll just say, well, you know what? They were good Catholics who were Nazis, and they were fighting communists. A lot of them are fixated, like I said, on communism. You see this a lot with Fatimists when they start getting into the Fatima prophecy about the errors of Russia will spread all over the world, and they say, well, that's communism. So which force was trying to destroy communism? It was the Third Reich. So therefore, the Third Reich is good. There's also a fixation on order. And in the Latin Rite, in the traditional Latin Rite, there's a lot of order. There's chants and order, and there's a whole system that you have to follow. There's an entire procedure that you have to go through in the traditional Latin Rite, and you have to do so with precision. A lot of movements and chants that you have to repeat in every single mass. So there's a lot of attention to detail. And the Nazis were all about order. So they like that sort of thing. You know, the Nazis marched in unison, they goose-stepped. There was a lot of order, a lot of talk about destroying communism, destroying liberalism, and things like that. So that's why they go for the Nazi thing. But if you look at a lot of Catholic literature, there's a lot of traditional Catholic literature. There's a lot of talk about communism, and how the Jews were behind communism. Karl Marx was a Jew, Lenin was a Jew, Trotsky was Jewish, etc., etc. So therefore, the Jew is seen as the enemy of the church, and therefore Hitler must have been great. Somebody asked me about, please, about the Polish plan to strike Russia. So I'll show you guys more about this in a little bit here in this very stream, because I do have an article to show you that talks about this. But the Polish government recently stated that if Russia tries to attack one of the Baltic states, that Poland will hit Russia. And I think they said something about hitting St. Petersburg. And they will have no qualms about hitting Russia. And the Poles actually stated that if Russia decides to, let's say, attack Lithuania, that the very minute that Russia enters Lithuania, Poland will be hitting Russia. This is what the Poles are saying. Is it bullshit? Is it true? Is it a serious? Is it a promise? I have no idea. But we'll get more into that. Let's see here. A lot of people are also fond of the Nazis for their aesthetics, such as it's correct. Yeah, the aesthetics, the order. That whole thing. I actually went to the bookstore recently, and I found a whole bunch of books on the rise of Nazism. So I'm still reading this book on the 100 Years War. I know I'm a very, very slow reader, because I tend to just read at night. So I read until I go to sleep. Reading does help. It helps put one to sleep, unless you're like a real insomniac, like myself. There's some difficulty there, to be honest with you, but reading does help. But I've been reading this book on the 100 Years War. Very, very interesting book. Very informative. I've never actually looked into the 100 Years War. All I knew before reading this book about the 100 Years War was that it was a war between some French people and some Anglo-French people, and they were fighting over territory, and the war lasted 100 years, and Joan of Arc sort of popped up in the picture eventually, and then helped save the day for the French. But now I have a basic idea of what the 100 Years War was about. It was about who was going to rule over France, and the English had a claim to the French throne because, Edward II was married to a French princess by the name of Isabella, and therefore his son Edward III was a rightful claimant. He was considered to be the rightful heir to the French throne because the King of France died and he had no sons. So he said before he died, if he told his wife, if you don't give birth to a son, because she was pregnant when he died, if you don't give birth to a son, then you're gonna have to find someone to replace me outside of the immediate family. So the whole thing was, who was going to rule over France? Was it going to be the nephew, or was it going to be the cousin of the king? And so you had Philip of Valois, who was the cousin of the French king, and then you had Edward III, who was the nephew, and the whole thing just spiraled out of control from there. A lot of massacres. The French, from what I understand, the French drew first blood. The French began to do incursions into England. They sacked several areas in England, and they did some pretty atrocious atrocities, and they just butchered each other. And it just lasted, went on and on and on for decades and decades and decades. And then eventually the French started really winning the war once the internal politics of the English went into shambles, and the English didn't really have much money, and also when the English lost their alliance with the Burgundian French. The Burgundians were a major ally to the English in helping them fight against the French, especially the political faction of the Armagnacs. Once the English lost that alliance, things became difficult for the English. But the English continued. They strived on. They tried to maintain their power over France, but eventually the English lost it. So, there was that whole thing. A lot of atrocities, lot of chevauchés, mass pillaging of entire regions in France. I mean, the carnage was so horrendous, and it came to the point where French people really, really resented the English, and understandably so. I mean, the English were pretty atrocious and merciless and ruthless, and the French began to see the English as monsters, There's you can see literature from that time period describing the English as a pretty diabolical race of people. And I actually wanted to talk to you guys more about that. Let me show you guys something real quick about that, because I do find it interesting. Hold on. Yeah, so here is the book I've been reading, 100 Years' War by Desmond Seward. And it's a very basic history on the 100 Years' War. But I want to read to you guys a line of how, really demonstrating how the French saw the English. It's very, very interesting. So it says here, in about 1419, an anonymous moralist writing a dialogue between France and truth gives a vivid picture of how some Frenchmen felt about the English invaders. So there's a book, and the author of which is anonymous, and the book is a dialogue between France and truth. And this was a very common theme back in the day, Middle Ages, and going into antiquity, you would have these dialogues. Philosophy was conveyed through a dialogue that was written on on paper. So you have dialogues between Plato and his friends, or not Plato, sorry, but dialogues between Socrates and his friends, dialogues between Cicero and his friends, things of that sort. And then you go into the early medieval period, and you see this very thing, this very theme, or this very style of literature being done. And the Middle Ages definitely continued this on. So there's a dialogue between France and truth. And the idea that there was a book in the Middle Ages about a dialogue between France and truth shows that by this point in history, the French really had a sense of national identity. And that's one of the things that the 100 Years' War did, was it helped to really cultivate the concept of national identity in Europe. In this case, it's between the English and the French. The English ended up developing a more amplified view of themselves as a national identity. And same thing with the French. The French really began to see themselves more and more as French, and that was because of opposition. It was because they began to see themselves as a distinct people. What helps to create this sense of distinction in a people is opposition. And we've seen this throughout history. For example, well, the Mexicans. The Mexicans, they eventually had their own sense of national identity by becoming an independent country. They overthrew the Spanish. They eventually overthrew the French. The Americans also. I mean, initially, people living in the 13 colonies, they consider themselves Englishmen. They did not consider themselves Americans. There were no Americans. And then after they overthrew the English, after the Americans overthrew the British, the Americans began to form their own national identity. When Germany first unified itself as a country, when all these German states, these various German states, unified themselves to become the Germany that we know today, back in the 1870s, one of the things that Otto von Bismarck did was he created a sense of us versus them. He needed an enemy for the Germans to despise, for the Germans to be concerned about, because that sense of having an enemy would give them more of an amplified view of themselves, more of an amplified view of themselves as a national identity. So the enemy, of course, were the Poles. Eventually, it also became the Russians. And by having this sense of being attacked or being a target of an outside enemy or an outside force, it gives a people more of a sense of a national identity. We are this people. We are proud. These people are against us. And when you have an us versus them situation, the them being against you gives you more of a sense of us. This is how human nature works. It's very, very common amongst humans to act in such a way. And so you look at the 100 Years' War and you find French and English nationalism really developing, because it was an us versus them situation. They are against us. And so we must be stronger. And when people are against you and they're trying to kill you, your entire view of your people, of the people around you, the people that you are working with, you're cooperating with to go against the enemy, becomes amplified. You see, when you're living in the United States, your sense of being an American is not really that strong. It's just like, this is where you live. You go out to McDonald's, everyone speaks English, and a lot of times Americans actually hate each other. If you're an American, you're living in a red state, and your entire life, all you've known is living in a red state, and you vote Republican, and you like the fact that your state is red. You like the fact that you are Republican, that your state is Republican, that your governor is Republican, that your Congress is Republican, your state Congress is Republican. Then all of a sudden, one day you go to the store and you see some guy with a shirt that says "Vote Blue," and you find out that he's not even from your state. You find out that he moved into your state recently. He came from, I don't know, Wisconsin somewhere, Maine. That really pisses you off. And what that does is it says, okay, this person is now an enemy of my society. He's an enemy of my paradigm, even though he is technically an American. Even though he speaks the same language as you, and he shares a similar shared American culture with you, you see him as an enemy. Why? Because now he's going to destroy everything you love, or he might destroy everything you love, or he wants to destroy everything you love. So knowing that gives you a stronger sense of your community. Now we really, really need to preserve this community. We need to preserve this culture that we love. We need to preserve all these things because these people are going to ruin it. So it makes you appreciate your own society. It makes you appreciate your own culture. Knowing that it could be destroyed by an outside force, knowing that what you have could be destroyed, makes you appreciate those things even more. It's like that song, you don't know what you got till it's gone, and everyone thinks that the guy said the F word when he's really saying you put up a parking lot. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. So, but if an American, let's say, goes to a different country, let's say you're a Republican and you go to France or you go to Italy, and no one wants to speak English, even though they may actually know how to speak English. And if you try to speak English, they look at you with a weird face. They look at you with disdain. With utter disdain, they look upon you. And you go to a restaurant and you're trying to order something, but you really can't. And the guy doesn't really understand what you're saying. It really sucks being in a country where the people don't speak your language, by the way. It really, really, really sucks. I mean, I know we all know that it sucks to be in a place where people don't understand you. But if you've actually experienced it, it really, really sucks to be in a country in the middle of a city where you don't know anybody and no one speaks your language. You try to communicate and you're using all the hand signals you can use and you're trying to use all the pronouns that you can because pronouns are somewhat, in a way, a lot of pronouns are universal, right? There's a lot of words that we share throughout the world. Burger King, do you know where the McDonald's is? You know? American, yeah, we all know what that. We all know that those words, but it really sucks. And then in the middle of this chaos, in the middle of this tedious and annoying predicament, you spot an American. One thing that you will notice is that when you're in a different country, you will spot a member of your nation, of your country, a mile away. How that works, I'm not sure. But when I was in Italy, I was able to spot Americans a mile away. And I'm not exaggerating. I could see a group of people a mile away and be like, those are Americans. And I was always right. Those are Americans. You could look at Germans, and you know those aren't Americans. Even though they're white, you know those aren't Americans. They have a certain look, a certain demeanor, a certain cadence to them, a certain gait when they walk. You know that they are not Americans. Germans are a lot of them are very... They have a very arrogant way of conducting themselves. They have very arrogant mannerisms. Germans do. When I was in the Vatican, I remember seeing all the Austrian and German tourists, and they were just, you know, they think that they're Übermenschen, you know, they're over you, and they're walking like they won World War II. Like, homie, you didn't win this war, all right? But they're walking around like they own Italy, and they kind of do own Italy if you think about it. because you go walk around Italy, you go to the BART station, German trains, German subway stations, German technology everywhere, German toilets, German showers. I was talking to an Italian guy when I was in Italy, and I said, everything is made in Germany, and he started laughing. He said, yeah, we're owned by them. Pretty funny. It's what's funny is that the Italians actually acknowledge this. But anyway, all of a sudden you see Americans, and you're like, hi. Wow. And it's really helpful because they speak your language and they can tell you, they can help you out. And when Europeans or other people who aren't your people are looking down on you because you're speaking a certain language, you're speaking your national language, and you're looking like your national self, and you walk like an American, talk like an American, they're looking down on you. A lot of Europeans look down on Americans, make no mistake, unless maybe if you're in England because we speak the same language, there's not so much of that issue. But if you go to Italy or France, they will look down on you for being American. They don't like Americans. Spaniards, I never really had that issue. Spaniards, when I was there, and I was in Spain for a good while, I never had that feeling. Maybe it's because I do speak a little bit of Spanish, and that did help a lot. But still, even though I was speaking with broken Spanish, they knew what I was trying to say, and they would talk slowly and communicate with me. They weren't rude or arrogant. Spanish people were very, very chill. Never had any issues with them. When I was in Italy, though, it was just like, oh my God, you can forget about it. You know, they were just, especially Northern Italians, very arrogant people. They can be very arrogant. But being in that situation gave me, it's very strange. It's a very strange thing for me to say because a lot of times people don't see me as a patriotic person. But I felt very American when I was in Italy. I began to feel American. It's a very weird feeling. But I begin to actually feel American. Like, wow, damn. And I was actually glad to see other Americans when I was in Italy because it made things a lot easier. So you start really getting a sense of your national identity when you experience opposition because of your national identity. It's very interesting how things work that way. This is why Muslims who live in Europe can become very... I noticed that Muslims in Europe tend to be very aggressive because maybe it's because they're looked at as weird, that they get the sense of that they need to be more Muslim just to give the middle finger to all the people around them. So they start acting more Islamic. Whereas in the United States, you can have Muslims walking around, and more than likely, people aren't going to look down on you. Plus, America has a way of mixing everybody up. I don't know why. I don't know how, but America does have that way of mixing people up better than Europeans do. Hello, Giuseppe. So, basically, 100 years of almost constant fighting between the English and the French created this sense of national identities in both peoples. The thing is that if you want to make people more nationalistic, oppose their nationality. That's one of the things that I've learned reading about the 100 Years' War. And the other thing that I learned about reading about the 100 Years' War is that the French people really can't fight. Frenchies were getting their asses whooped in almost every single battle in the 100 Years' War, especially if you look at the major battles that took place. There were a lot of little skirmishes and battles that took place, and the French did win, I want to say a decent number of them. But if you look at a lot of the major battles, I mean, the French were losing. And even a lot of the minor battles, the French were losing a lot of them. And I've talked about them before. Battle of Sully or Sluy, Battle of Sluy, which was the first major battle in the 100 Years' War. It was a naval battle. I mean, 30-something thousand French fighters on thousands of ships versus, what was it, like 15,000, 7 or 15,000 English fighters on a smaller number of ships, and the English were able to destroy the French. And you look at the Battle of Crécy, Battle of Calais, Battle of Agincourt. They were just getting their asses whipped all the time. Battle of Rouen. the French were just losing all the time. And even when the French would have far superior numbers, the French would lose because they just, I think the reason why the French lost so many battles is a mixture of different things. I think it's a mixture of, this is going to sound, it might sound controversial, I don't know, but this is my opinion and people will disagree with me. I don't give a shit, but I think it's the truth. I think it's a mixture of between genetics and military strategy. I think the English people are bigger than French people physically. They have a lot of Germanic blood because of the Anglo-Saxon invasion. The French also have a decent amount of because of the Norman invasion, but I think the English have more of it. The English are very much bigger people. Plus, the English had a lot of experience fighting the Scots, and if you can fight the Scots, you can fight anybody in medieval warfare. The Scots are very good fighters. Even the Romans couldn't take the Scots. And also the military weapons weapon, I should say, that gave the English the advantage over the French was, everyone has heard this before, right? The English longbow or the Welsh longbow. There's a whole debate on whether or not the longbow is Welsh or is it English. I don't know, but the longbow gave a huge edge over the French for the English. And the French were just, the English were very tenacious people. I mean, read the battles, the way that they fought, and even, like, for example, the Battle of Agincourt. I mean, it's such an epic battle. You had the English with an army of, I want to say, around 6,000 or 7,000 men, most of whom were archers with little to no armor, versus, I mean, we're talking like 30,000 French fighters, a lot of whom were armored up like tanks, and they had some cavalry units. The English didn't have heavy cavalry. They had a small group of several hundred men-at-arms who were experienced warriors, but the rest of the army were pretty much archers. And the English were underfed. They were malnourished. A lot of them had died from disease before the Battle of Agincourt. So their numbers had been reduced to about, like I said, 5,000 or 6,000 men. And when the French came in, when the French hit the English line, the English formation, it did push the English back a little bit. But the King of England tells the archers, put down your bows and your arrows and just fight to the death. And you had these English archers with little to no armor, I mean, just slaughtering French fighters, even though a lot of these French fighters, like I said, they were armored up like freaking tanks. They were all tanked up. And you read stories like that, and you think, man, that must be so embarrassing for the French. So embarrassing for the French. Or when you look at the Battle of Crécy, I mean, tens of thousands of French warriors, French fighters, versus a much smaller number of English fighters. And the English are outnumbered in the Battle of Crécy. And the English have tons of heavy cavalry and crossbowmen, and the English don't have heavy cavalry. The English have like in the Battle of Agincourt, they have a small number of men at arms, and they have a ton of archers, thousands of archers, and the archers are slaughtering the Italian crossbowmen that the French brought over, and the French had these huge horses and heavy cavalry, and they no matter how many times the French would do these marches, would do these incursions with their horses, the French were just getting picked out by the archers. They were just getting slaughtered by the archers. And it was so embarrassing for the French that the King of France, when he finally decided to retreat, he only had about 3 men with him. And they rode away, and they went to some castle because they were so parched, they were so thirsty, they needed something to drink. They stopped at this castle in the middle of the night, and the King of France is screaming at the men from the gate, "Open the gates, for this is what France has been reduced to." He said something to the likes of this. This is the fate of France. The King of France with only 3 men after the French had been butchered, even though they had the higher numbers, they had the superior numbers, they had tons of men at arms, tons of armored men, heavy cavalry, crossbowmen. They should have won this battle, and they didn't. It really tells you something about the tenacity of the English in those days. They were very, very tough people. And for the Scots to have been able to get the victories that they did with William Wallace and then later on with Robert the Bruce tells you something about the Scots. The Scots were freaking warriors. The French did win the 100 Years' War, but this is after decades and decades of getting their asses whipped. And like I said, the English lost eventually to a great extent because the English didn't have as much money. The English were dealing with an agricultural disaster. The English, the alliance that the English had with the Burgundians was very, very shaky. The Burgundians weren't really... The English found out that the Burgundians weren't as trustworthy as they thought they were. And with the English being very weak, that is when the French finally win, from what I understand. But the French were just losing so many battles, and in battles that they should have won. You know, it's like the Persians. I mean, did the Persians invade Greece? Yes. Did the Persians ever get victories over the Greeks? Yes. But if you look at the war between the Spartans and the Persians, I mean, it's pretty pathetic for the Persians. So it's very interesting because in Europe nowadays, there is this concept that we all have that says, okay, Europeans are white. French people, English people, they're both white. And nowadays, you will see English people and French people saying, we as white Europeans must defend Europe from becoming invaded or overwhelmed by migrants from the third world. And an English right-winger and a French right-winger will unite on this issue. If you were to rewind back to the Middle Ages and go to France and tell them, hey, you guys should become friends with the English, they would have spat on your face. They would have said, the English, those demons, those barbarians, those wicked, sinister people. And I want to read to you guys what this book from about the year from about the year 1419, the author of which was anonymous, said about the French. It says here that the war they have waged, the war they, the English, have waged and still wage is false, treacherous, and damnable. But then they are an accursed race, opposed to all good and all reason. So this French writer is saying the English are an accursed race, that they are treacherous and damnable, opposed to all good and all reason. So he's describing the English as barbarians, people without reason, people with no logic, people you can't reason with, people who are uncivilized. And today, you have French people and English people saying the same sort of thing about people from the Middle East, for example. But back in the Middle Ages, the French were saying the same things, the same type of stuff about the English. But then they are an accursed race, opposed to all good and all reason, ravening wolves, proud, arrogant hypocrites, tricksters without any conscience, tyrants and persecutors of Christians, men who drink and gorge on human blood, with natures like birds of prey, people who live only by plunder. And you know what? It is completely understandable that somebody wrote this. Hello, Nastia. That somebody wrote this during the 100 Years' War. Because when you read about the 100 Years' War, one thing that you will notice is that the French, from what I understand, the French drew first blood. You had French fighters going into England and sacking towns, slitting people's throats. I mean, the whole thing. So the English decide that they're going to invade France and they're going to slaughter people. So the English go into France and they just do butchery for decades. The English would do, and I have a video that I'm working on currently. I finished recording it, but I just need to add the B-roll and do all the editing work. So that's coming out soon. But I will say that the English, they did a lot of what they would call chevauchés, right? Chevauchés was basically the medieval version of firebombing your enemy. So during World War II, the Americans and the British, they firebombed Germany. I mean, they firebombed it. I mean, they engulfed German cities into flames. They reduced German cities to flames. There's a story that you can read from World War II of a German woman with a cigarette going outside and just putting her cigarette on a flame and lighting her cigarette. So in the Middle Ages, they had a concept of this similar to what you read about in World War II. It was called chevauchée. The chevauchée was the whole strategy of a chevauchée was to make the people who were your enemy so miserable that they would eventually break. So you would cut them off from food. You would destroy entire crop fields so that the people will starve. You go into a village, and it's free reign on the people. It was killing, stealing, raping. And this happened so many times in the 100 Years' War. It was basically free reign. You do what you want. You go into a village, you do the chevauchée. You go into an entire region of France, and there's all these villages around. You go throughout these villages, and you do a chevauchée. You steal, you kill. And you will read about how French people would run out of the village when they knew that the English were coming. They would run out of their villages and they would go into the forests. And so the English would come and they would look for the people. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? And then eventually they would say, they must be in the forest. So the English soldiers would comb through the forest, scouring for peasants to kill. And they would hunt people down in these forests. It's like, I remember reading about this, thinking to myself, this is like something out of Nazi Germany. Oh, there's Jews hiding in the sewers, we go into the sewers. There's Jews hiding up in the ceiling, we go up into the ceiling. Jews hiding in a basement somewhere, we go in there. Like in the scene from Schindler's List, when the Germans are using the little doctor's tool, I forget the name of it, the one that the doctor uses to hear your heartbeat. They're using that tool to see if there's any Jews inside the walls and things like that. And the English, these Anglo-Saxon, Germanic / Norman fighters, they were going around scouring the forests for French peasants and raping and killing and looting. And you had English people who were dirt poor back in England. And they said, man, we're dirt poor. How do we get rich fast? They're chevauchés. Go into France with an English army and participate in a chevauchée. You took hostages, French hostages, and then you could use those French hostages to get ransom money. If they were poor French people, you would just kill them because nobody was going to pay money for them. But if you found yourself a French nobleman, you hit bank, you hit a jackpot, because now you could ransom that nobleman for a lot of money. And they were English people who were dirt poor who became rich by simply partaking in these battles in France and chevauchés. Plus, there was a lot of loot, a lot of booty. You stole a whole bunch of stuff. You had now valuables that could help you get rich. And then, of course, there was the very diabolical practice of rape, which was quite common. Hello, 117 Rebel. And you became a marauder. That's right. You became a marauder. It was like the Vikings. You know, there's all these arguments about why the Vikings did what they did. Why did the Vikings decide? Why did these Scandinavians decide to go out and just rape Europe? Basically, effectively what they did. And there's one theory that I heard that there weren't really a whole lot of women in Scandinavia, and so these Scandinavian guys decided to go out and get women. There was a lot of sex trafficking that was being done by the Vikings. The way I look at it is that the Vikings were simply people who wanted to get loot fast. Scandinavia at that time, I imagine, was quite poor. And so these people said, okay, well, our gods, the Scandinavian gods, teach us about the glory of war. There was definitely a religious foundation of all of this, most definitely. But they basically believed that the Scandinavian gods glorified war, and they did. and that if they died while in battle, they would live for the rest of eternity in the halls of Valhalla, the hall of the gods, and there would be women that they could eternally have sex with, like the Islamic heaven, and there would be endless amounts of mead to drink. So you would be drunk, having sex, and you would be fighting in heaven. Endless battle. So battle, sex, and alcohol for all of eternity. And this is the biggest difference, I think, or one of the biggest differences between the Islamic heaven, what is known as Jannah, and Valhalla, is that in Jannah, you have sex, mansions, and wine. In Valhalla, you have sex, mead, which is basically wine made out of honey, and you have battle. And in the Islamic Jannah, in the Islamic heaven, there is no eternal battle. So the Scandinavians, they basically said, let's go out and loot. And if we die in battle, we'll be in Valhalla. And let's go to those monasteries in Ireland. Let's loot the monasteries in medieval Europe. Let's steal all this stuff. There's lots of stuff to be stolen. Lots of loot. Vikings also were involved in sex trafficking. Everyone talks about everyone talks about how the Vikings were these noble people, and no, they weren't noble. They were criminals. So they went out, they stole, and they stole people. Oh yes, they were into sex trafficking. This is not talked a whole lot about, but it's true. They were into sex trafficking. They would take young European girls, young European boys, and they would take them into the Middle East, because in the Middle East, a young white girl, and this is for the people in the Middle East who were very, very sick and demonic people, they were into little boys. And the people who were into little girls obviously were also demonic and sick. And in the Middle East, the price for a young boy or a young girl was higher, because this child or teenager was from Europe. So they wanted those European they wanted European youths to violate, and the Vikings made a lot of money from actual sex trafficking. So this sort of evil, and you can read about this, this sort of thing being done, not the sex trafficking part, but the looting and pillaging and sacking. This was done by the Saxons, who another Germanic people related to the Scandinavians. Saxons went into what is known as England. They sacked the Celtic natives, took over that area. The Normans did this to France. There was a time when you had this, within the medieval period, you had this phenomena of Germanic military raids. And they would sack, loot, kill, pillage, things like that. And it was easy money, easy land grabs, and all that. Interestingly enough, if you want to get really, really ancient, if you want to focus more on the ancientness of this all, you can go to the what are they called? The Yamnaya people. Yeah. So who were the ancestors of today's Europeans? Well, according to the archaeologists, they'll tell you that one of the main ancestors, or the main ancestor or ancestral people of much of the Europeans today, are people called the Yamnaya. We call them the Yamnaya because I guess that's where they discovered their remains initially, somewhere in Russia. I don't remember. I don't exactly remember why they called them Yamnaya, but that's the term that we have given them. And the Yamnaya were an Indo-European people who had roots in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and they also had roots in the Caucasus region. And they would eventually migrate upwards. They would go into Eastern Europe. They would go into, and eventually their posterity would be found in England, in Ireland, in Central Europe, Northern Europe. And everywhere they went, they mixed and they conquered. So this was another similar situation, but there's very, very sparse information about this, because all of our knowledge on the Yamnaya comes from basically forensic archaeology. So we really don't know. much about them. We do have knowledge on their genetics, their genetic makeups. We do have some of their weapons. Maybe we have some knowledge of their religion. But for the most part, I mean, we're talking very scarce information here. But what we do believe, what the forensic archaeologists believe, is that at one point in history, there was an explosion of these people. These people just spread throughout Europe, and they mixed up, and they conquered, and they were very warlike people. So the European people today, they can trace their genetics back to the Yamnaya. And interestingly enough, I believe that the country or the countries in Europe today that have the most Yamnaya blood, I'm pretty certain are the Germans. I could be wrong about that, but this was a common phenomena in ancient times. And you fast forward into the Middle Ages and you read about the Anglo-Saxons all of a sudden invading England. You read about the Viking invasions that really, really messed up a lot of Europe. And then you read about the 100 Years' War. And when you read about the 100 Years' War, you read about these English people whose descendants are Anglo-Saxons. You read about these English people just going into France, raiding, pillaging, raping, and then taking loot back and taking people for ransom and getting really wealthy, taking entire territories in France. And it's kind of like the Vikings. That's what I was being reminded of. It was very reminiscent of the Vikings. Like, well, you have these Germanic peoples who are doing these raids, and they're getting a lot of loot, and they're getting wealthy from these incursions. And then you read about the 100 Years' War, and it's kind of similar. I understand there's a much different background when it comes to the 100 Years' War. I mean, the whole vying over who was going to be the French monarch being the main catalyst of the conflict, or at least one of the main catalysts. But it's similar. It rhymes. This whole thing rhymes. And so as I was reading about the 100 Years' War, I'm thinking, wow, very interesting. Europeans today will unite, and they'll say, we're going to unite against the influx of migrants, which is, it's understandable because a lot of migrants have been trouble. I'm not saying that that's all just a figment of their imagination, although I will say that the problems with mass migration are being used as a pretext for evil motivations, such as reviving Nazism. And I've talked about that many times. But nonetheless, if you were to go back to the medieval period, I mean, you had white people who saw themselves as an accursed race. The French seeing the English as an accursed race because of what the English were doing to the French. And even, I mean, you don't have to go back that far. You could go back to World War I and World War II, and you will see the Europeans despising one another, despising each other. So perhaps at the moment, Europeans can unite against mass migration. But maybe in the future, we will see different European peoples despise one another. Perhaps in the future, we will see Poles and Germans despise each other again. The way I look at it is that tribalism can be done amongst people who look exactly like each other. You can have Serb versus Croatian. I mean, Serbs and Croats speak the same language. They're the same people, the same Balkan Slavic people or Southern Slavic people. They will hate each other. And in the 1990s, the Serbs and the Croats had a war. In World War I, the Croats and the Serbs killed each other. Really, the Croats butchered the Serbs during World War I. World War II, you had the Ustashi, the Croatian fascists who were proxies of the Germans, and they butchered so many Serbian people, hundreds of thousands of Serbs. Hundreds of thousands of Serbs. But yet, they want to talk about the Muslims. I understand the Muslims are a problem, but in many cases, you will see people who look exactly alike killing each other. So you have to ask yourself, where does that come from? Because you see, you have these people who want to make everything about eugenics. They'll say, well, blacks don't get along with whites because of genetic differences. But at the same time, throughout history, you find white people not getting along with each other. And you can even go to Israel today, and you can find many Jews who don't get along with each other. You find secular Jews hating on religious Jews, Orthodox Jews hating on secular Jews. You have Jewish extremists who hate Israelis who are politically moderate. I mean, you find this in amongst Israelis who are a very nationalistic people. You go back to the early part of the 20th century, you read about Russians killing each other, red Russians versus white Russians. You read about the Chinese Civil War, communist Chinese versus nationalist Chinese. These were the same people, but yet they hated each other more than they hated anyone else around them. Koreans, South Koreans versus North Koreans. I mean, that conflict, that contention between North and South Korea is still there. We're still talking about it. Protestants versus Irish in Northern Ireland. I mean, they look very much alike. You can't even tell them apart, but they despise each other. So is hatred really all about eugenics and genetics and genetic differences? I don't think so, because you just see so many overwhelming examples of people who look exactly like each other hating each other, hating on one another. So what is the root cause? In my opinion, I think a lot of this is spiritual, and I think a lot of it is a resentment that certain people have against other people, because those people at some point did them wrong. So, for example, in the United States, we have slavery, right? We had it. We don't have it now. But at one point in time, we had slavery. And we're still talking about slavery. The problem, and I don't have an issue with talking about slavery, the history of slavery and all that. In fact, I don't think we don't get into enough details about slavery. You know, who were some of the people behind it? What were their names? The problem is that a lot of African American people are told, you are a victim, and because of slavery, you have been held back in life. Because you're black, you're being held back. Because you're black, police officers stop you. And we've seen this so many times. I saw a video a number of weeks ago of this terrible police situation in which you had a car accident. 2 people died. This was in where was this? Minnesota, which is a terrible state. If you ever plan on moving to the U.S., never move to Minnesota. Minnesota's a shithole. It's an absolute dump. It sucks. It really is. If America had an anatomy, I would say Minnesota would be the asshole. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the asshole of America is Colorado. I don't know. It's debatable what is the asshole of America. But anyway, there was an accident. 2 people were killed. And you see this black girl who is crying, and she's absolutely hysterical. She's so hysterical, and she's crying so much. She's screaming and screeching so much. You think, wow, this person is the victim here. Like, what the hell's going on? What's happening? So the police take her aside and they say, listen, relax, calm down. I have some questions for you. And she's acting hysterical and screeching, oh my God. And the officer says, listen, you got to calm down. I need to ask you some questions. I need answers from you. 2 people have died. This is very serious. I need answers. Oh my God. And at this point, you go from having some sympathy at the surface because you don't really know her situation to just being annoyed by her. You're like, okay, lady, what are you trying to hide here? So the officer says, the reason why 2 people are dead is because you were racing. What? I was not racing nobody. I wasn't racing. I was just driving my car. And the officer says, no. You were racing. And you're going to be charged. You're going to be charged because 2 people are dead. And you're going to be charged. Well, she had to go to court and all this stuff, and they had the evidence against her. The prosecution had the evidence against her. And I actually watched the evidence. The evidence was a video from a nearby security camera showing this woman clearly racing with a relative of hers. I think it was her brother, I believe. She's racing. She's going over 100 miles an hour down this road. They're driving super fast. And this poor couple, white couple, they were driving to a family's house for, I think, Thanksgiving or something like that. And they're driving, and they drive down the road, and boom, she hits them. They both die. She starts to play the victim, and she tells the police officer, "You're arresting me because I'm black." No, you're being arrested because you have committed a crime. You were racing on the street. Two people are now dead because of your reckless actions. You need to be held accountable. But she has no sense of accountability because she has this ideology that says, I am a victim, no matter what, and I can always hide my guilt behind victimhood. You see, victimhood is the greatest fuel for criminality. I truly believe that. If you want to make an entire society filled with criminals, or filled with people who tolerate criminals or who make excuses for criminals, make them think that they're victims. Make them think this people did you wrong, and you now have an excuse to act the way you want to act. So they say, well, my ancestors were slaves, and we were slaves, and now we're gonna pillage. You see? And that's why you see all these videos of shoplifting, massive amounts of shoplifting, crime, and things like that. You have these people who are very organized criminals now, and this has been going on for a number of years. They go into these very expensive stores, Nordstrom, Gucci or something, or a cell phone store, jewelry stores, and they're just robbing. And they don't give a damn. They don't even have a sense of, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? Like, listen, there have been a couple moments in my life when I forgot to put something on the little conveyor belt that you put your groceries on when you're buying stuff at the store. I don't know what they call it, right? It's the conveyor belt. You put your groceries on the conveyor belt, and then the register lady passes it through the scanner. Okay, there have been moments when I have forgotten to put things on that conveyor belt. And I'll go to the parking lot, and I'm looking at my grocery cart, and I'm thinking, oh my God, there's an item here that I forgot. And every single time, I have gone back and said, hey, I forgot to pay for this. And they say, oh, no problem. Just, it's this much money. Okay, here you go. And I'll go. My conscience is cleared. Or are you saying you're a saint? If you want to make that argument, you're insane. Because wanting to pay for things doesn't make you a saint, all right? If you think that wanting to pay for things makes you a saint or makes you want to portray yourself as a saint, you got a pretty low bar for morality. I mean, this is like the baseline of morals here, right? Don't steal, don't kill. You have these atheists who'll come and say, I'm a moral person, I don't steal, I don't kill. That's the baseline. That's easy morals. Don't murder, don't steal. Pretty easy in the morality spectrum here. Pretty simple. Basic rules. Don't steal. Don't rape. That's another one. Don't rape. I'm a moral person. I've never raped anybody. Well, this is basic morals. Don't rape, don't steal, don't kill, don't murder. But the reason why I do that is because I know, like, even if it's something as simple as a can of peanuts or something, can of beans. If I say, it's not a big deal, I'm just going to go, I would feel guilty about that. Like, I would feel guilty. Like, I stole something. There's something about it. It'll just irk me a little bit. A little pricking at my heart. I'll feel it. There's an actual feeling. But you have these people who just steal, and they don't give a shit because for them they've earned it. You know, they've earned it because they've been wronged. Their ancestors were wronged. We deserve this. You see, And it's this mentality that's the poison of the mind, the poison of the soul. I'm a victim, therefore I earn this. It makes you wonder about the war between the demons and the angels in heaven. How did that all happen? We have little bits and pieces of information in the Bible about the war between the angels and the demons and how all that happened. I kind of remind myself, I kind of am reminded of that scene from the film The Matrix when Morpheus is trying to tell Neo the lore of how the Matrix came to existence. And Morpheus says, we have bits and pieces of information, but we do know is that it was us who tried to scorch the sun. We have bits and pieces of information about the war between the angels and the demons. What we do know is that Satan was very arrogant, and he did not want to serve God. He didn't want to serve God. He was arrogant. And I can imagine, because it says that Satan convinced a third of the angels to follow him. And I can imagine the conversations that Satan had with the angels that he wanted to seduce to his cause. Well, that God guy, he has all the power. I mean, we can share some of it, right? Why can't he give some of that authority to us? And now he wants us to honor mankind. Man is lower than us. Why are we doing this? I'm sure he had some very convincing arguments. And if anyone is very good at convincing people to do evil, it's Satan. Satan, at the end of the day, is an eternal lawyer. But I can imagine the arguments. So this is the poisoning of the mind, to get people to think that they are owed something. I am owed this, therefore I can do that. You see this in war all the time. Soldiers have, their fellow soldiers have been killed in battle. They're hungry, and they're filled with rage. Not only filled with rage against the soldiers, the enemy combatants, but they're enraged at the people who are in the country that they're fighting against, or they are a part of the culture that the enemy combatants are a part of as well. So they go where? What do? They say, well, we're soldiers. We've been fighting your people, fighting your soldiers. They've killed our guys. We're hungry, and we haven't seen women in a long time. Therefore, we deserve to. And they go into towns, and they rape, and they pillage, because they believe that they're owed something. You see? They believe that they're owed something. And I think that the English had a similar way of thinking. The English, in the 100 Years' War, or before the 100 Years' War, the English were very poor. England, the author of this book that I've been reading, The 100 Years' War, by Desmond Seward, England at that time was very poor, didn't have a very big population, wasn't wealthy, didn't really have a lot going on for it, did not really have a major agricultural business, and the French, on the other hand, were very wealthy. France was an agricultural bastion. So much wine was being produced in France because of all the vineyards. There was just a tremendous amount of farming, a lot of wealth, and there was a lot of prosperity in France. And I think the English envied that. I think they saw themselves as deserving to go in there and loot. And they did. And they looted the wealth of France. And you can read a similar thing when it comes to the sacking of Constantinople. Not the sacking done by the Turks. See, everybody wants to talk about what the Ottoman Empire did in 1453. Nobody wants to talk about what happened before, where you had Catholics going into Constantinople, looting the hell out of the city, looting it of its wealth, and becoming rich. And Constantinople never recovered from that, and so it was easy picking for the Ottomans. But who made it easy for the Ottomans to take Constantinople? It was the Frankish mercenaries who were supposed to go take Jerusalem, but they went rogue, and they decided to go to Constantinople, and they looted the wealth of that city. Europe at that time was not really that wealthy. So Western Europe, that is, Northern and Western Europe. So the East was wealthy. Constantinople was a very wealthy city. So they said, let's go take it. It belongs to us. We deserve it. Because you can read about African American criminals today, right? They go into stores, they steal, they think they deserve it. And you can say, well, this is black behavior, right? But at the same time, you can read about European wars, and you can read about Europeans doing this to each other, stealing and raping and sacking and looting and laughing about it as if it's fun and games. Well, is that genetic as well? Was that also genetic? Was that from their genetics? I think the problem is the poisoning of the soul. Now, do genetics play a role in our behavior? Yes, they do. And various genes can be activated depending on various circumstances. I understand that genes definitely play a role. But at the same time, we have a choice whether or not to react, or whether or not we have a choice on what we're going to do. We have a choice on what we're going to do. And we can overpower, or we can choose not to follow what our bodies want. Didn't the Greeks slaughter the Latins? Yes, they did. I'm glad that you mentioned this. There was about 90,000 Latins who were butchered by the Greeks. And I think that the biggest problem when it comes to discussing this history is the how both sides don't really like to talk about what the other side did. So yes, before the Franks sacked Constantinople, not too long before that, there was a pogrom that was done by the Greeks against the Latin community, because the Latin, and again, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is actually another example of what I'm talking about. The Latins who were living in Constantinople were very successful. They had their own businesses, and they had their own, they had a lot of wealth. You had these merchants who were from Europe. I think they were mainly Italians, and they had a lot of wealth. They sold goods and merchandise and things like that. And the Greeks said that these people are going to ruin us if we don't get rid of them because they're so wealthy. So they went into the Latin communities and proceeded to butcher around 90,000 people. Now, try to imagine 90,000 people. 90,000 people is a small city. So try to imagine 90,000 dead bodies. It's pretty unfathomable. All right? It's pretty unfathomable. 90,000 people is a ton of people. And they butchered those people. Why? Because they said, well, those Latins are wealthier than us. They're hoarding the wealth. We are owed this. We have a right to do mass murder. I'm actually very happy that this person, I think it was Mr. Bossman, brought this up. Because that's an excellent example. And there was a Greek, from what I understand, there was a Greek priest who was preaching to the Latins, saying that the Latins are terrible, and they're dogs, and they're this, and they're that, and they're this, and the other. And there was a terrible pogrom that was happening. There was a lot of hatred against the Latins in Constantinople. So you could take that story as an example of what I'm talking about, this idea that I am owed something. And this was not done by Middle Eastern people. It wasn't done by African people. It wasn't done by Asian people. This was done by Greeks, Europeans. They acted this way. They acted in this atrocious way. And one thing I really don't like is I've actually brought up this story with Eastern Orthodox people, and they will always downplay it. Well, I have one guy I remember told me years ago. He said, well, yes, it did happen, but the massacre of the Latins, Theodore, was not considered to be a major event even by the Latins themselves. And medieval chroniclers from the Latin world don't really talk so much about what happened to the 90,000 Latins who were butchered. So while it did happen, it was not really a significant moment in the history of Latin Orthodox relations. And my response is, so what? 90,000 people being butchered is still 90,000 people being butchered. You can say what you want. And so, yes, the Greeks did that because they had that poisoning of the mind. We are owed something. We can do this. The Franks sacking Constantinople, the same thing applies. We are owed this. Let's go and steal and rob and kill and rape. And that's what they did. These were not migrants. migrant invaders from Syria. These were French Normans. So that's what this is. The Nazis going into Poland and butchering millions of people. I mean, it's basically the Vikings on steroids. So I think this is really the main issue, is this idea that we are owed something and therefore we can commit evil and it's my right. Evil is not a substance, it is the deprivation of good. You have an incorrect metaphysics. Okay, what did I say that was incorrect? You're talking about yin-yang? I don't know. Never studied yin-yang. Well said, appreciate that. When in fact you wouldn't know what good is without evil, which is why they go together, to much like yin and yang. Oh, I think you guys are arguing. To be or not to be, that's the question. You can know good without evil. Yeah, I never really liked that argument. Like, you wouldn't know good without evil. That's not true. That's like saying you wouldn't know a straight line unless you've seen a crooked line. I mean, the fact is we can identify a crooked line because we know what a straight line is. I don't need the existence of crooked lines to know what a straight line is. This is a straight line. All right. The Latins were very wealthy, which is why a lot of them moved to Lisbon and Seville during the Age of Exploration. Yeah, a lot of the Italians were into trading. If you look at the like the Genoese and the Venetians, or super wealthy people. What do we got here? 37 people watching. Not bad. Not bad at all. I remember reading about the raiding of Constantinople. I cried and cried. Couldn't believe it was so. Now I am jaded. People are capable of anything. Which raiding by the Franks? I remember reading about that back in 2000 and let's say 14, and I was very depressed by what I was reading. Oh, you guys are arguing. You guys are arguing. Eternal lawyer. Never thought of it that way. Yeah, that's how I see it. The devil isn't this barbarian with the horns. The devil is a sophisticated force who can come up with very clever arguments to justify anything. One of the best monologues in movies is Al Pacino as Satan in Devil's Advocate. I remember seeing that film many years ago. Do not underestimate Satan. He convinced angels. That's correct. The reason why humans are naturally divisive is because that last time they were united, they were trying to build the Tower of Babel. Shave your beard. It's pretty shaved. The abject madness and slaughter that humans have engaged in throughout history. I never really understood that. I never really understood just the idea of going into a country to raid and pillage and steal. I remember reading about the 100 Years' War, and you read about how you had these random English dudes who went to church, and they went to mass, and they took communion, and they were like, all right, I'm going to go for a raid. I'm going to do a little chevauchée, have a little bit of fun. I'll be right back after a few months, all right? I'll be a little bit wealthier, all right? You hear? I mean, there's nothing Catholic about this behavior. Theo, if you are wondering, I will help you. This started with Zen Master starting this. Okay, I got you. I understand now. Yeah, you guys are arguing dualism, dualism is a demonic heresy. That's my theory. It's not theory, that's my belief. Speaking of the demonic realm, I actually want to show you guys an article that's very interesting. It is published on RT, Russian television. So here we go. I want to show you guys this article here. And I'm going to talk some more. The article is about human sacrifice in India. And I'm going to read to you guys some excerpts from this article, and then I'm going to show you guys some excerpts from this book, 2 books actually. I want to show you guys excerpts from this book here. It is called The Roots of Hinduism by Asko Parpola, who is a professor, or was a professor, of Indoology at the University of Helsinki. I'm not sure if he's still there, but definitely an Indoologist who is reputable. And he talks a lot about human sacrifice in ancient India. And then I want to show you guys some excerpts from this book. This is a very informative read. And I did do a number of videos on the material in this book. It's called Dying for the Gods by Miranda Aldhouse Green. This is a really, really informative book on human sacrifice in ancient India. And I'll show you guys some excerpts from both of these books. So let's first get to this article here. So this was published today. It's very interesting. Human sacrifices in 2024. Here's how black magic brings horror to the modern world. So it says here, Krishna Kushwaha of Hathras in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh was first in his family to get a formal education to ensure a brighter future for his children. He enrolled them in a hostel. Little did he know that his 11-year-old son, Kirarth, would fall prey to black magic. So this guy, he was the first in his family to actually get an education. So he said, okay, I'm going to make sure my son gets an education. He puts his 11-year-old son in this private school. Little did he know that teachers in the school were going to ritually murder him. And that's what happened to this man's son. This was in India. So it says here that Kirtarth was a student of Standard 2 at the DL Public School, not private school, sorry, public education. On the evening of September 22nd, he was kidnapped by 2 of his teachers, the owners of the school, and one of their fathers. The kidnappers assaulted Kirtarth, breaking his collarbone. They then performed an occult ritual, after which the boy was strangled to death. And this reminds me of the Thuggee cult that was around when the English were controlling India. There was a cult called the Thuggees. And if you've ever seen the movie Indiana Jones, there was indeed a cult called the Thuggees. In the film Indiana Jones, there was a cult called the Thuggees. Well, in reality, there was a cult called the Thuggees, and the Thuggees were a people that were a cult that were completely dedicated to the evil deity Kali, Lord Kali, and they literally committed human sacrifices for Kali. They literally murdered millions of people, millions. And the only reason why the British began to investigate what was going on is because they noticed the sudden decline in the population. Wait a second. What happened to all these people? Millions all of a sudden are dead. Because this cult for years was going around kidnapping people and murdering them. Ambushing people, murdering them for Kali. They were doing this all the time. All the time. So it says here, okay, the school contacted Krishna and told him that his son was not well and he was being taken to hospital in Agra. So they tried to create an alibi. They said, oh, he's in the hospital. Oh, he died. Sorry, we don't know what happened. Krishna found this suspicious. When the family found their son's body, they discovered disturbing marks and found that his head had been shaven. So the fact that his head was shaven shows it was an indication of a ritual murder. During a subsequent investigation, police visited the site of the black magic rituals and uncovered material linked to the practice, such as occult texts. Under interrogation, one of the accused confessed that the child had been sacrificed, as the school owners believed it would bring prosperity to the institute. So they said, okay, we got to bring some money to the school. Let's try to appeal to whatever demon we're worshiping. Let's capture and murder a child. But Kirtarth's ritual wasn't the first of its kind. The school owner had tried to kill another student. This failed when the boy raised the alarm. The suspects also revealed that the school owner's father had been practicing black magic since his youth. The day after Kirtarth's murder, about 264 kilometers west of the location, the corpse of an 84-year-old man was dug up in the middle of the night, and its skull was removed. Investigators believed that the exhumations and skull removal was part of a black magic ritual. So investigators exhumed their bodies. So here in early 2022, 2 lottery vendors in Elanthur in South India's Kerala were victims of a gruesome murder. Investigators exhumed their bodies and found that both women had been tortured with assault marks all over their corpses, and one had a breast missing. Pretty sick stuff. The accused reportedly confessed, saying he had been seeking financial gain. So, I want money, I want money. Let's go commit mass murder. Roadside advertisements for occult or black magic are visible across the nation, be it in a Tier 3 city, in villages, or even in India's Silicon Valley. Of the 4 Vedas, Hinduism's religious text, the Atharva Veda is said to contain secrets related to magic and alchemy. The basic means of exorcism are the mantra and the yajna, fire ritual used in both the Vedic and Tantric traditions, etc. Pradibha Singh, a guest psychologist at the Bureau of Police Research and Development, said these cases result from factors such as low self-esteem, blind faith, and immorality. In such cases, we need to check their generational history because it gets passed down generations after they coincidentally get a result, and then their faith turns blind. They then go for bigger sacrifices like an animal or a human sacrifice. The problem is so deeply rooted in our culture that it is directly or indirectly practiced in granular ways in almost every family. So this guy's saying that black magic is pretty deep in Indian society. And this part of the article says here that the central Indian state of Jharkhand has emerged as a hotbed of witch hunting. Between 2016 and 2022, more than 250 women were killed across the state after being stabbed, etc., etc. So I want to show you guys, in light of all this, I want to show you guys some interesting excerpts from this book. As I was reading this article, I thought to myself, I should read excerpts from this book that I read years ago. Well, did I read this book years ago? Actually, no, I didn't. I actually read this book last year. So, felt like years ago, but it actually was just last year. The Roots of Hinduism by Asko Parpola. Very informative read. So, I'll read to you guys some excerpts from it. So it speaks of the fire altar, or in the Vedic literature, Kimpurusa. So it says here, of the 2 words, only Kimpurusa occurs in the Vedic literature. In Brahmana text, these specify that when a fire altar is built of bricks, 5 victims are sacrificed, and their heads deposited in the Ukkapat, in the center of the lowest layer of the altar. So they would take the heads of victims, an animal or a human, and then they would put the head in this cauldron. Kind of reminds me of Palo Mayombe, which is a Brazilian kind of a Afro-Brazilian way of doing witchcraft. It's very dark stuff, but they will always use this. They have the whole Palo Mayombe system in Brazil is fixated on the cauldron, and so what you put in the cauldron will give you power. So if you, it's very, very sick stuff, but this is actually what these demonic people will do, is they will take a child, and if the child does not scream, they kill the child, they put the child's body, I think, in the cauldron, and so now they have absorbed that power of courage that the child in their minds had. So they have absorbed the child, or the child's energy. Whoever they kill, or whatever they kill, they absorb the energy of that person or that thing. There was a famous case of this back in Mexico. There was a guy by the name of Adolfo Constanzo. He was a Mexican serial killer, and he was kidnapping children and then ritually murdering the children to gain their energy. And then he wanted more intelligence, so he said, "Well, I want to get more intelligent." So he told his followers to go out and find someone who is a doctor or someone who's going to medical school. So they ambushed a medical student who was American, by the way, and they brought this American student across the border. Well, he was already in Mexico, but they brought him to his place, wherever he did his rituals, and then he was murdered. And then they put his body parts in the cauldron. And so he thought that he absorbed the intelligence of this young man. Very demonic stuff. It ended up causing an entire investigation done by the American investigators, and they eventually found out. Mexican police eventually found out where this guy lived. They went into his apartment, and two conflicting stories. One, that there was a shootout in which the Mexican police killed him, and the other story is that he committed suicide. But that's the type of demonic activity that we're talking about here. But it's very ancient. This stuff is very ancient. So going back to this book on Hindu religion, it says here that five victims are sacrificed and their heads deposited in the ukka pot in the center of the lowest layer of the altar. These 5 victims, including a man, are spoken of as animals of the village. Man, purusa; horse, ashva; cow, sheep, and goat. They are correlated with 5 animals of the forest, which have been kept imprisoned but are then released in order to remove any evil created by the distress and pain suffered by the victims of the sacrifice. The 5 wild animals are Kimpurusa, wild ass, Gaura, bison, Uriel or camel, and Markhor or ibex. Mockman, depraved man, deformed man, dwarf, savage, and ape have been suggested as possible meanings for Kimpurusa. And then on the next page it says the sacrifice included a revival ritual that involves Okay, so let me go back here. Based on textual evidence, I propose that the human victim in Vedic sacrifices was a harp-playing bard who was called, like any member of a modern orchestra, after his musical instrument. The sacrifice included a revival ritual that involved swapping the severed heads of the human victims and the animal victim, resulting in 2 mythical creatures of the kind described above by Magha. And then we can go on here. So it says here that childless young married women are reported to have fed crocodiles in the hope of being blessed with offspring. Before the British stopped this cruel practice in the early 19th century, women in performance of a vow used to throw a firstborn son to the crocodiles at the mouth of the Hooghly River in the hope that such an offering would secure them additional offspring. So they would take their own baby and they would feed the baby to crocodiles in the hope that this sacrifice would bring them more offspring. Then it says here that symbolic feeding of a baby to a crocodile continues in Bengali Hinduism. During the Gajan festival of Shiva, in some temples, a crocodile is made of clay, its mouth colored red with vermilion, and a baby made of clay is placed near its mouth. So the British stopped it, so they ended up doing a different version of this ritual by simply taking a mock crocodile and putting the clay image of a baby into its mouth. The Vedic text contains statements indicating that a human victim was once sacrificed on this day and that his flesh was eaten by the participants, as was done on the 10th day of victory until the British period of Karnataka. Votive offerings of firstborn babies to crocodiles were performed by couples wanting offspring in Bengal until around 1810. A similar promise to sacrifice his firstborn son was forced upon King Hariskandra when he approached god Varuna for an heir in the Vedic Sunhasepa legend recital at the royal consecration. And there's more on this topic in this book, but those are just the excerpts. But this is a part of the demonic world, the demonic realm. And I want to show you guys an excerpt, read to you guys an excerpt from this book, Dying for the Gods, by Miranda Aldhouse Green, a very informative book on ancient European human sacrifice. And it says here, this is a quote from Herodotus: "The heads of all enemies killed in battle are taken to the king, a head being a sort of ticket by which a soldier is admitted to his share of the loot. No head, no loot. He strips the skin off the head by making a circular cut around the ears and making out the skull. He then scrapes the flesh off the skin with the rib of an ox, and when it is clean, works it in his fingers until it is supple and fit to be used as a sort of handkerchief." So he takes the skin off the skull and makes it into a handkerchief. Let's see here. 1 second, guys. He hangs these handkerchiefs on the bridle of his horse and is very proud of them. The finest fellow is the man who has the greatest number. They have a special way of dealing with the actual skulls, not with all of them, but only those of their worst enemies. They saw off the part below the eyebrows, and after cleaning out what remains stretch a piece of rawhide rounded on the outside. The skull is then used to drink from. So they would take the skin off the flesh, keep the skin as a handkerchief, and then they would keep the skull as a trophy. And this was done by the ancient Scythians, according to Herodotus. And there's many examples of human sacrifice in this book that are described in this book. I won't go on, but it's all pretty much the same thing: blood, guts, gore, the whole thing, just evil. But this is the evil of the pagan world. This is the evil of the pagan world. Feed them to crocodiles. Yep. This is India. Yep. Not ancient Egypt. How do people come up with this crap? I think it's satanic influence. Abominations. It's all paganism. I'm very glad that the British took over India, because they got rid of a lot of this stuff. It's more visible than Africa. Yeah. India is the place where ancient paganism has been preserved, but a lot of the more savage aspects of Hinduism aren't as common anymore because of the British Christian influence. Although I think that is changing, and you see a lot of stories like the one I read to you earlier, in which you have the owners of a school murdering one of the students. You just described Aztec ritual. Oh yeah, the skinning of people, the keeping of the skin. Yeah, this is very, very common in ancient paganism. Is it demonic if one experiences mystical psychosis, gaining the ability to see into the near future? For the most part, yes, I do. There are some people who were given the gift of prophecy, but if someone comes to me and they say they have the gift of prophecy and they can tell the future, I'll say that more than likely it's demonic. Didn't the Mexican witchcraft practice look like those who practiced by European witches? Similar, yeah, actually, from what I understand. Shalom Blake, Shalom Aleichem. India is filled with demons, and the whole BJP thing. I've talked about this before, but the Indian Nationalist Party, the BJP, very, very powerful, very popular, and Hindu nationalism continues to intensify, continues to grow, and it's only going to get worse. I foresee India putting people in camps, putting Christians and Muslims in camps, and just exterminating people. That's what I foresee as far as India's future goes. I have nothing. I have nothing positive to say about India. Nothing positive to say about that country. Divine Soldier in the house. Background music is great. This is Persian classical music. Moving on. I want to show you guys this article here. This pertains to the American election. Let's talk a little bit about that because it is very interesting. Obama urges black men to back Harris. Now, this is very interesting because I don't see how Obama... I'm just trying to figure out how Obama thought this would be a good idea to say, hey, look, black guys voted for me more than they did for Kamala Harris. And I understand that liberals would say, like, hey, he was simply saying, like, black guys need to go out and vote for Kamala Harris. But he's literally saying, brothers, they liked me more than you. That's literally what this guy said. Like, brothers like me more than you, Kamala. He's not really helping his ally here. Former President Barack Hussein Obama appealed to black voters while campaigning for Vice President Kamala Harris on Thursday, nothing he hadn't seen, noting, my God, what is wrong with my eyes? Noting he had not seen the same kind of energy and turnout in communities as we saw when I was running. So when I was running, brothers were voting for me by the droves. They love me. They don't like Kamala. Brothers don't like Kamala. Recent polls indicate the former President Trump is picking up a little more support from black men than he did in 2020, and that while more black voters back Harris, she's lagging behind Biden's numbers. So brothers prefer Biden over Harris. They obviously prefer Obama over Harris, and a lot of them are preferring Trump over Harris. Now, you could say, well, what difference does it make? It can make all the difference. This actually could tilt the scales enough to get Trump to win. Because remember, these American elections, they're not determined by 1 million votes. They're not determined by hundreds of thousands of votes even. They are determined by tens of thousands of votes. So the last election, Trump lost by about 20 or so thousand votes. That was it. That's all is needed to get a victory. There are people who are going to vote. Listen, most people who are voting, they've already made up their minds. They're going to vote for their candidate no matter what. So there are people who are going to vote for Harris no matter what. There are people who are going to vote for Trump no matter what. And there are tens of millions of people who are just going to vote for their candidate no matter what. Nothing is going to sway them. But there's a small number of people who can be convinced to vote in either way. And if you get those people's vote, you win. And these are this is a small number of people. We're talking 20,000 people. That's it. 20 or so thousand people. So if Trump can get enough black folks to vote for him, he can win. If he can get enough Arab people in a state like Michigan to vote for him, he can win. So just getting 20,000 more votes makes all the difference, or can at least make all the difference. So it says here that driving the news. Obama said at a campaign field office in Pittsburgh ahead of speaking at a rally for Harris in the Pennsylvania city that the turnout issue he noticed seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. These are his words, not mine. YouTube. Understand that. He continued, "You're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I got a problem with that because part of it makes me think, well, I'm speaking to men directly, and, that you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president." So he's basically telling the brothers that they're sexist. They're a bunch of male chauvinists, and that's why They don't want to vote for Kamala Harris. Now, I think there is truth to this. One second here. Sorry. You see, one thing I know about a lot of people who are in the melanated world, let's just put it that way, they don't like women telling them what to do. You see this in the Mexican machismo culture, and you see this in the inner city culture sort of thing, where they don't like no women telling them what to do. You know, and that's why these people talk. Like, I ain't gonna listen to no woman. Don't you tell me what to do, woman. So they don't mind voting for Biden because, well, he's a man. He a man. They don't mind voting for Obama because he a brother, right? He a brother. A lot of them don't mind voting for Trump because he a thug. Trump is a thug. You know, he got all the felonies, the system trying to bring him down. He's rich. He has a lot of women. He a pimp. He's one of us, right? They don't mind voting for him. But then here comes Kamala. Kamala looks like your average inner city public school vice principal. And she has an annoying voice. So what's the appeal, right? It's just another woman telling me what to do. And I don't like that. I ain't down with that. You know, I don't want no woman telling me what to do. I ain't down with that. You know what I'm saying? I ain't down with that. So there's that whole thing that goes on. And I think Obama is correct. I think there is definitely truth to this. They don't want to vote for no woman. They don't want to vote for no sister. And a lot of I've noticed this on YouTube. You have these African American guys on YouTube who have really nothing good to say about black women. I've noticed this. I am simply YouTube. Understand this, YouTube. Before you flag this video, I am simply making an observation. I am an observer, nothing more, nothing less. I am nothing but an observer. I have watched a lot of videos. I am sure all of you guys have heard of the red pill space. A lot of people on the red pill space are African American dudes. And I watched these videos, right, who are these black dudes who are saying things such as, oh, I don't want no bitch, I don't want no woman, F these hoes, blah, 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 these women ain't no good, women ain't no good, blah, blah, blah. And, hold on one second. Yes? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So they're saying, like, I don't need no bitch. These bitches ain't shit. Blah blah blah. Right? And I don't like that world. All right. Personally, it's not my thing. I don't like the red pill space. Even though, like, look at me. I'm a 34-year-old man living in the U.S. No girlfriend, no wife, no kids. Listen, I've had my experiences with women who weren't very good, but I refuse to join a subculture because of maybe some bad experiences that I've had or some negative experiences that I've had. I don't like the idea of having hatred against another people because of their gender. Same thing with race. You'll never see me join some group of people who are about, I don't know, like hating on a certain race. I'm not down with that. I'm not for that. Because if we're going to hate people because they're of their gender or because of their race, then it's like basically saying God made a mistake. And I'm just not down with that. Plus, I don't really like hating people because of what they are. You know, you're born a woman. I mean, does that make you evil automatically? Right? It's crazy. So you have these people who get on these red pill spaces, and they're just absolutely annoying, obnoxious people. I can't stand them. I can't. I don't like them. They're like, if a woman gonna come after you, she's gonna have to follow your lead, and she's gonna have to follow your lead. And if you don't get her to follow your lead, then you the bitch in the relationship, and she got her foot on your face, and you ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, she don't even see you as a man. All right. And then while she getting resources from you, she taking your money, she taking your shit, she living in your house, right? While she doing all that, what you think she doing while you at work? She getting nailed by 50 other brothers. They all running the train through her. You know what I'm saying? And you, the simp, you the bitch in the whole relationship, and blah blah blah. Even if what they're saying is true, right? If women are that bad, then my response to them is the best way to win is not to play, right? Like that's my philosophy. Like if let's say the red pill ideology is true, women are naturally Darwinistic, they love this word hypergamous, and they're only in it for the alpha, and after they get screwed by 80 alpha dudes, they're going with you, Dexter or Point Dexter, and now you're stuck with this woman who has been, who had the whole train ran through her when she was in her 20s, and now you're just taking the leftovers, right? You've married her when she's now 38 years old, and now you're just getting what's left of her whatever beauty she may have, or whatever youth she may have left in her, and she was completely drained like a prune, like a dried fig, by these alpha guys. And now you're the beta who's giving her money and resources and a house. She don't even love you. She's only using you for whatever. And let's say all that is true. My position in such a situation is the best way to play is not the best way to win is not to play. That's it. The best way to win is not to play. You see what I'm saying? Guys, can you stop arguing in the chat? You guys, this whole debate about whatever, it's just enough. Enough. It's annoying. It's it. It's over. Who cares? You're not going to agree with each other anyways. Who gives a shit? Done. Drop it. Like, you guys are arguing. Somebody says something. I see something. Okay, whatever. It's pointless. It's a pointless discussion. But just the whole thing with the red pill thing is just, I know we started talking about Obama, and now we're talking about the red pill thing. If women are that bad, let's say they're that bad, right? Because the way that they describe women are just evil. I mean, they're just evil, right? They're going to go with NBA players, musicians, actors. They're getting screwed by, all these different guys. And then they go with you because you're the only one who's going to love her and take care of her child, blah, blah, blah. Now, that's pretty evil. But let's say that they're right. And I think in many cases this is true. And I'll give you that. I'm not saying this ain't happening. It definitely is. But so I'll give you that, right? I'll say you're right. My position is I say the hell away. Right? They say Western women are this and Western women are that, and they're awful and they're hypergamous. I'll say you're absolutely right. I'll give you that. I'm not going to even debate you on that. My position is I say the hell away. I stay the hell away. But you have these red pill people who are saying, oh, women are this and they're that and they're evil and they're this and that, but they still want to get laid. They want to get laid and get relationships, and they still want to. Well, if they're that bad, I stay away from them. I don't even want to sleep with them. I went on a date back in 2022 with this redheaded girl. First date, she already starting bullshit with me. Yeah, this actually happened. Already starting bullshit with me about. I don't even want to get into it, but she was already started an argument. But I'll tell you what she said because some of you may be interested. Basically, she said, you see, my father and I would write these articles. We still work together in writing articles. My father always helps me in writing my articles, editing, gives me ideas, things like that. And she was like, why is your father helping you? And blah, blah, blah. And all this like crazy, stupid bullshit. Like first date. And at that point, it's like I had already made up my mind. Like, this ain't going to work out. This straight up is not going to work out. This is bullshit. But I'm a nice person. We finished the date, whatever. We had coffee, we had a little dinner, and we went our separate ways. I never texted her. Didn't say, "Oh, I had a great time and let's meet up again." Nothing. Didn't call her, didn't text her, nothing. The next day, she starts texting me. "Oh, I had a great time." And this is women, right? This is how they are. This is how you are. This is how they are, right? If you're doing all the texting, she devalues you. Don't text her at all. See if she texts you. If she doesn't, then drop her. But the next day, she's texting me. "Oh, I had a great time, blah, blah, blah. It was amazing, blah, 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 blah." And she asked me to go on a second date with her. So I went on a second date with her. Now, she was pretty. She's pretty redheaded girl. Her grandmother was an immigrant from Ireland. She was Irish girl, real Irish American girl. So we went out again, and we're talking, and out of nowhere, she tells me, "I need to friend zone you." So you have to understand, I had already made up my mind that this wasn't going to work out in the first date. Second date, she asked me for a date. Here she is now trying to play games with me. So I had already made up my mind this wasn't going to work out. Now I really made up my mind. Like, okay, this is bullshit. She's already trying to play games with me. So she looks at me and she says, "I need to friend zone you." Exact words. "I need to friend zone you." This is within like the first 30 minutes of the second date. I just look at her and I say, "Okay, that's fine." Because I had already friend zoned her in my mind. So we finish the little date. We have a little dinner. Okay, we leave. We go our separate ways. 2 weeks later, she's texting me. "I like you. I think we can have a relationship." Now, all of a sudden, she doesn't want to friend zone me. I mean, just stupid shit like this, dude. This is the kind of shit that I would see in the dating world, personally, in my own personal experiences. Just this type of bullshit. Just exhausting bullshit. And when she pulled that shit on me, I texted her back. I said, "Listen, let's just be friends." And that was it. I totally friend zoned her ass. Just this type of bullshit. So the red pill people are right. And to a great extent, like I'm not even going to argue with it. Like, yeah, dude, this is an absolute reality. You look at, for example, famous people, musicians, athletes, whatever, NBA players. They're screwing everybody. They don't even they could literally just walk into a room and women want to have sex with them. The average dude has to go through like the whole bullshit process, right? So it sucks being an average guy. I'm not going to lie. It kind of sucks. It doesn't have to suck, but usually it does for a lot of people. So like, I'm not going to argue with red pill people. Like, they're right to a certain extent. I think they go way too far. But my point is, if it's really that bad, and it is kind of bad, don't get me wrong, then the best way to win the game ain't to play. Did I get laid? No, I didn't get laid. Nothing. There was no getting laid. Getting laid wasn't even in the picture. So, but there's so much of this stuff that goes on where it's just red pill, blue pill, women ain't shit. And one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the guys on the whole red pill space, a lot of these guys are African American. Again, I am making an observation here. I am not trying to make any ideological statement. I just noticed as an observer, YouTube, before you flag me, as an observer, a lot of these people are African American people. They're African American men. Whether it's fit and fresh at the top or right down in the bottom of the YouTube world, a lot of the red pill space is like African American dudes. You see Asian dudes. Like, there's a lot of these they're not white dudes. Why is this? I don't know. I have my theories, and maybe I'll get into that. But I first want to say that when I look at these African American guys, when I look at these African American guys, um, they have nothing good to say about African American women. Like, they straight up are just African American women suck. African American women are annoying. African American women are this. They're the worst. They're awful. They're this. They're that. They're this. They're that. And they just have this. They have all these terrible experiences. All these terrible experiences. With African American women. So there's this whole sense that's very pervasive. It's very ubiquitous in the African American male world, which is black women ain't shit. They're awful. They're this. They're that. Whatever. And they see Kamala Harris and they see that. I know I went into this whole spiel about dating and red pilling and all this shit just to make that conclusion, but that's the conclusion. Like, and I think Obama's got a point. Obama straight up, like, I think he's got a point. Right now, I am drinking a Pepsi Zero. Okay. You guys are still arguing? Theo got to go to Coptic Bible study. All right, man. See you later. Have fun. Wait, so you're black pilled? I don't even know what that means. Like, what does it mean to you? Black pill, I guess. I'm just telling you my experiences and what I have observed, over the years, over many years, actually, over 10 plus years of trying to date here and there and all this crap. You showed some good self-control on this one, considering how much you liked it. I know. She was pretty, very pretty girl. Real Irish face, like red hair, that stereotypical Irish look, and she was trying to play games with me, but she ended up, liking me and everything. But I just knew this is not going to work. This is not going to work. I'm pilled. I'm too old. Yeah, exactly. A lot of black people don't actually see Kamala as black. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you cannot ignore it because you think I'll say in your mind for some... I don't even know what you guys are talking about. But the fact is that Obama said that. I mean, that doesn't really help him. That doesn't really help Kamala, is my point. Because you're supposed to be saying, like, Kamala Harris is doing great. She's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And no, he's saying, man, brothers like me, than you. He's telling Kamala Harris, the brothers like me. They don't like you, woman. And he's not really helping her. He's saying that brothers are liking Trump over you. I did better than you. I mean, he's saying it in a nice way, but that's effectively what he's saying. I don't know how that's helping him. It's just not, I don't really see that as helping him. MGTOW. MGTOW is kind of an old thing. It went from, I remember back in the early 2000s, it was like PUA shit, pickup artists, how to get laid. And then the POA thing it went from PUA to MGTOW to red pill. And now these red pillar types are becoming traditional Christians. It's like, what? I think the whole thing's a psyop. You misspelled in the title, but I don't know if you can fix it without restarting the stream. Misspelled what? Oh, the video title? Hold up. Oh, I said tailing about. Oh, Lord. I'll fix it up. Hold on. Thanks for letting me know. All right, it's fixed now. Yeah, women will interfere with my gains. We can't have that. We cannot have that at all. My gains. Starting to talk like one of those meatheads. My gains. Do not become misogynistic. Yeah, I agree. I don't like the idea of just hating people because of their gender or thinking worse of them or whatever. I think that's crazy. People tend to get the wrong conception, see everyone with African ancestry as the same. She's Jamaican. There's no natural allyship between them and someone whose family been in the USA since 1700. Never dated a girl, so I can't really relate. Women are annoying, but eventually I will need to expand my bloodline. Oh boy. Yeah, I gotta expand the bloodline. We can't let your line die with you, you know? Hope you get a good match, Ted. If not, then God has other plans. I don't know, dude. Is it now legit to be a passport, bro? I mean, you can do whatever you want as long as it's legal, but I mean, the whole passport bro thing I think is freaking cringe as hell. This woman loves me, yeah, because she's living in poverty in the Philippines and she's desperate. I mean, I don't feel right about that. I don't think it's a psyop. I just think men have had enough of women's bullshit. True. That's true. Ted's got a level head. All these modern movements just lead to varying levels of extreme. They do. That's the problem. Yeah, it just leads to extremism. I agree. A manly drink. This is just iced coffee. Black iced coffee. Yeah. I've seen men who are married who are miserable. You know? So it's like, I mean, either you can stay lonely, but lonely can be easily dealt with. Loneliness can be easily dealt with. But if you get married, it's sort of like you're crossing a path that there's no return from. So that's the thing. So let's get back to the news here. The French are wanting to come back to the war path. And if the 100 Years' War and World War II and World War I are any lessons, it's that the French aren't really the best fighters. France's army faces deterrence test against Putin's Russia. In May, French soldiers will participate in a large-scale military exercise in Romania, dubbed Dacian Spring 2025, that will assess their ability to swiftly move to NATO's eastern flank. So the French want to see how fast can our soldiers move in the case of a war with the Ruskies. We used to play war. Now there's a designated enemy, and we train with people with whom we'd actually go to war. The head of the Army's Land Command for Europe, General Bertrand Tijoux, told reporters on Friday. In the past few years, France's land forces have started a, quote, profound transformation, unquote, to be ready for a high-intensity conflict similar to the war in Ukraine. So imagine French soldiers doing trench warfare like they did back in World War I. The French army also has new marching orders from NATO. By 2027, it should be able to deploy a war-ready division in 30 days, including ammunition and supplies. That year, 2027, that is a seriously scary year. I am actually terrified of that year. I think by 2027, we're going to be seeing countries having military forces that are war capable. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be scary. If that does indeed come to fruition, I think it's going to be a very odious year. Because a lot of countries have said the same thing, that by 2027, our military forces will be ready. You know, the Chinese have said something similar. The Japanese have something similar. The Turks have said something similar. The Hungarians have talked about this, that by the year 2027 or around that year, they're going to be war capable. The key challenge will be to get Romania in such a short period. The key challenge will be to get to Romania in such a short period of time. There is still no military Schengen, and we need to decisively improve military mobility in Europe. So they want to make a military Schengen zone within Europe so that various European armies can move within the EU without any sort of hindrance. So there's that. And it's very scary. But you see, the French have talked about actually sending troops into Ukraine. The French really want to show that they're militarily capable. And you have the whole thing with Poland and Lithuania. We'll get into that in a little bit here. Poland and Lithuania, how the Germans have slowly been sending troops into Lithuania. They want to eventually have 5,000 soldiers in that country. And it's very interesting. Poland is trying to be the most powerful military in Europe. I think if you ask me, the country in Europe that is the most powerful, officially on paper, is France, if I had to make a guess, because the French are a nuclear power, but also Great Britain is a nuclear power. So Great Britain is also pretty robust because of that. But France has a pretty big military, from what I understand, and they have nuclear weapons. And the French want to show that they're militarily capable. But the Germans are rising up. And I've talked about this many times. I've been talking about this since 2016. The Germans want to show that they're militarily capable. And they want to put soldiers in Lithuania. And what borders with Lithuania? We could say Poland, yes. But Russia also borders with Lithuania because of Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad is a province of Russia that does not share a contiguous border with Russia, but nonetheless it is a part of Russia. It's Russia. Like Alaska doesn't really share it doesn't share at all a contiguous border with the United States, but nonetheless Alaska is one of the 50 American states. So the same thing with Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad borders with Lithuania, and a number of years ago, we're talking back in 2022 or so, the Lithuanians were really messing with Kaliningrad. They were not allowing certain products to be shipped into Kaliningrad, and the Russians, I think, had to transport goods. They had to transport goods through another way, if I remember correctly. But nonetheless, the point is that Russia told Lithuania, if you don't stop this, there's going to be serious consequences for you, Lithuania. You're going to have a lot of problems. So I think Kaliningrad will be a huge point of leverage that's going to be used against the Russians. Can we take Kaliningrad? Can Germany take Kaliningrad away from Russia? I think that's going to be a big part of the future global conflict, the future conflict within Europe, especially. In this case, Europe. So I think it's going to be a big issue, Kaliningrad. And I suspect what the Poles and what the Lithuanians are doing is they're trying to bait the Russians into a war. Because Russia has said numerous times, listen, we are not interested in fighting Lithuania. We're not interested in invading the Baltic states. We are not interested in invading NATO. So I think what NATO is trying to do is similar to what they did to the Soviets in Afghanistan. They armed all these jihadis in Afghanistan, and they did it with the deliberate intent of baiting the Russians to invade Afghanistan so that the Mujahideen, armed by the U.S., could slaughter enough Soviet soldiers to devastate the Russians. This was the whole intention. And it worked. The death of the Soviet Union was seen in Afghanistan. It was finished off in East Germany, but it was really, the death really began in Afghanistan. So I think the Westerners are doing a similar tactic here. They're saying, okay, we're going to put all these German troops in Lithuania. Poland is talking about having the ability to send missiles into Russia. You have the Lithuanians at one point actually blocking certain goods from entering Kaliningrad. I think all of these things have just been baits to try to get the Russians to do something. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to get worse with it. I think in the future they're going to get more intense with trying to bait the Russians into invading Lithuania or invading the Baltic states so that they can tell the world, look at Russia, oh my God, oh, they're awful, they're invading NATO. And they're going to do that with the hopes of pulling Russia into a major conflict with European countries like Germany, like France, like Poland. Because they have this idea in their heads that Russia will invade NATO. And they want to make that happen. I think they're pissed that Russia hasn't invaded NATO yet. They're pissed that Russia has not invaded the European Union yet. So they want to make that happen. But they want to goad the Russians into that. That's what I think. Baltoids are nothing but a chihuahua to us. When their NATO shield comes off, we'll serve them their Arctic cold justice. They probably have that atrazine UN on the German drinking water that's making the crowds. Okay, here we go. I don't know if this is trolling or if this guy's serious. Let me show you guys an example of what I'm talking about. Let me try to find the article here. What happened to the article? Where did it go? Oh my God. I can't find it. Let me try to find it. Hold on. Oh, here it is. I found it. Here's the article. So how do you know for a fact that, since you're serious, okay, how do you know for a fact that atrazine is making people gay in Germany? So here it is. Polish general warns of immediate strike on St. Petersburg if Russia attacks NATO. In the event of an attack by Russia on Poland or the Baltic states, there will be an immediate response. Allies will strike directly at St. Petersburg, said Polish Chief of General Staff Raimund Andrzejczyk at the Defending Baltic Conference, according to Bild on October 11th. According to Andrzejczyk, if Russian forces cross the border into Lithuania, within the first minute, allies will target all of Russia's strategic assets within a 300-kilometer radius. We will strike directly at St. Petersburg, Andrzejczyk declared. To prepare for such a scenario, Poland is currently purchasing 800 missiles with a range of up to 900 kilometers, which will be deployed if Russia attacks. Ukraine is buying us a few years. If Russia wins in Ukraine, we'll have one Russian division in Lvov, one in Brest, and one in Grodno, Andrzejczyk added. emphasizing that an attack on the Baltic states of Poland would signal the beginning of total confrontation. Lithuanian Presidential National Security Advisor Kęstutis Budrys also believes that if Russia wins in Ukraine, its imperialist expansionism will be directed at Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. He warned that the risk of aggression toward the EU will increase if Belarus becomes a fully integrated part of the so-called Union state. So there you go. You got the Poles saying, Russia, if you do this, we're going to hit you. And if Russia wins, which Russia is going to win, for the most part, I think Russia's going to end up more of a winner than a loser here. I think there's going to be a concession. If there is a peace settlement between the Ukrainians and the Russians, Russia will gain territory, Ukrainian territory, definitely eastern Ukraine. So there's that. That has to be factored into this whole thing. Is Russia going to take over all of Ukraine? I don't know. But this Polish guy is saying that if Russia takes all of Ukraine, then we're going to have to do something. And he's saying if they step 1 inch into Poland or the Baltic states, we're going to be hitting them. We're going to bomb St. Petersburg. Okay. So they're already making threatening statements. And the Russians have said, listen, we're not interested in the Baltic states. But like I said, they want to provoke. And I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to do something to provoke the Russians. That's my opinion. How long until the Germans and Russians divide up Poland again? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. What else do we have on the news? Oh, yeah, here's another interesting story. I thought this was pretty interesting. General McGregor stated recently that Zelensky is going to run away from Ukraine. I thought this was really interesting. Ex-advisor of the Pentagon predicted the escape of Zelensky to the capital of one of the European countries. Now, people could say this is all bullshit or whatever, but there's some interesting facts that have been made on this article here. I'll show you some interesting facts on this article here. So it says here, President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, will flee to London by order of Western Special Services after the defeat of the armed forces of Ukraine. This opinion was expressed by the ex-advisor to the Pentagon, Colonel Douglas McGregor, on the YouTube channel Daniel Davis/Deep Dive. Zelensky is a reliable aide to the West. He will play a role until the CIA or MI6 orders him to get on a plane to London. He believes that the rest of his life, for the rest of his life, the Ukrainian leader will spend in luxury while Ukraine will be in ruins. The colonel called such a scenario a tragedy. And interesting, this is very interesting. It says here, in August, McGregor said that Zelensky plans to leave the country due to the success of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The expert noted that the president of Ukraine has already transferred his billions to foreign accounts and bought real estate in Italy and the United States. So according to this guy, Zelensky has already transferred billions of dollars into a foreign account, or foreign accounts, I should say, and that he has already purchased real estate in Italy and the United States. So it looks like he's planning something. It says here that the ex-advisor of the Pentagon noted that even before this scenario, the leadership of the APU can carry out a coup d'etat and overthrow Zelensky. That's also a possibility. Now, remember, before Zelensky took power, he talked about making peace with the Russians, and he talked about making concessions. He actually was willing to give up or to allow the Donbass to become autonomous states, essentially allowing them to become satellite states for the Russians. And the Nazis in Ukraine were saying, Zelensky, if you do this, we're going to lynch mob you. They were saying that. So there's a lot of people in Ukraine who hate Zelensky. They say he's a traitorous Jew. And if there is a peace settlement in Ukraine, a peace settlement will not be agreed without some sort of concessions in favor of Russia. The Russians are going to say, listen, we lost a lot of soldiers fighting in Ukraine. We're not going to leave empty-handed. We're going to take territory. If you want peace, you're going to give us Eastern Ukraine. You're going to give us Donbass. And if they really want peace with Russia, they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to make concessions. And I think that that's going to happen. And if concessions are made, I think and Zelensky is still in Ukraine, he's going to have to run away because then the Nazis are going to want to kill him. You see? There's another interesting article about the world that's a weird way to say it, the world. But Putin recently stated that a multipolar world is actually inevitable. And it says here that the president of Russia noted that the process of doing a multipolar world is already underway and it is natural and irreversible. During his speech, the president noted that a new era has begun in the world, the era of global fundamental changes, and stressed that the idea of equality, not only between people, but also between states and nations, close and understandable to the reasonable people. Okay, that's a mistranslation there, but he's basically saying that a multipolar world is completely irreversible. It's happening, it's forming, and it's completely inevitable, guys. It's going to happen no matter how you look at it. And I've said this many times, but the world is changing dramatically. I mean, we all know this, right? We've all seen this sort of thing. And the idea that America is just going to run the whole world forever, I mean, it's just impossible. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, guys, because empires always fall. They eventually crumble, and the American empire is no different. And you already see it happening. You know, you hear about, oh my God, guys, I don't know what is wrong with me today. It's just not a good day for me. I'm a little bit tired. I'm not going to lie. I always thought saying Slava Ukraina was weird. It is cultish. Let me just think for a second here, guys. Hold on. I think I need to smoke something. Oh, God. The world as we know it is dying. It's going down. And I've said this before. Eventually there's going to be spheres of influence and spheres of power. The Europeans will have their own sphere of power led by the Germans. The Japanese will have their own sphere of power in Northeast Asia. The Chinese will have their own sphere of influence. The Turks will have their own sphere of influence. And you already see this sort of thing happening where the Europeans are talking more and more about being autonomous, being independent of American power, American control. And you already see it in Austria, for example. I mean, the Nazis got the most votes. The Freedom Party did. I remember the last time the Freedom Party got a serious electoral victory. They were in a coalition with the People's Party, the Austrian People's Party, which was led by Sebastian Kurz. And the People's Party is a right-wing party in Austria that's not as crazy as the Freedom Party. The Freedom Party is actually more far-right than the People's Party. But you look at the last election that Austria has had, the one that happened last week, the Freedom Party, which is the real hardcore far-right party in Austria, they got 29% of the vote. They got the majority of the votes in Austria's last election. And these are people who they want to break away from the American empire. And you see it. You see it happening right before our eyes. You see it. It's history repeating itself. You see people who are basically Nazis, far right, one of the members of the Freedom Party, his name is Andreas Molzer. Andreas Molzer has literally said, let's bring back the Reich. He doesn't say Third Reich, but he says the Reich. Let's bring back the Reich. And he says, let's reunite Germany and Austria. Now, the last time the Germans tried to reunite Austria and Germany, it was under Adolf Hitler. It's pretty scary what you see happening nowadays. It is. It's pretty scary. The world is completely changing. By changing, it's going back. That's what's happening right now. You're seeing a return back to ultranationalism, back to Nazism, back to Ottomanism in the case of Turkey. Stay away from the cancer plant, yeah. You know, it's just going back, going back, going back. That's what's happening. You're just seeing constant circling, a return to history. And there's that verse in the Old Testament. There's nothing new under the sun. All the things that happened in the past will happen again. That's in the Bible. This is the Word of God. And God is telling us that history works in circles. History doesn't work in a linear fashion. God is telling us that society works in a circular way, a circular fashion. That's what we see happening. And people just don't believe me. They say, oh, no, these aren't Nazis. Nazis was back in the 1930s, blah, blah, blah. No, they're Nazis. They've just remarketed themselves in a different way. They've just repackaged themselves in a different way, but it's the same thing. And you see it in Europe with the rise of the Freedom Party, AfD in Germany, Freedom Party in Austria. You're seeing it all over. Catalonian separatism. I mean, the whole thing. It's absolutely surreal to see what's happening in the world. You know what's so disturbing about all this stuff is you don't really find right-wing figureheads or even conservative figureheads warning people about this stuff. You don't see it happening. Yeah, you don't see it happening. You just see conservatives talking about, well, you know, I'm so scared. The world is becoming liberal, and the world is going woke, and woke is what I'm so scared of. And wokeism is not my biggest worry. Maybe I'll be wrong in the future. Maybe I'll be proven to be wrong. But wokeism is not. It's not the biggest threat, in my opinion. I think wokeism is a. I can't really prove this. Maybe one day I'll spend like a month researching the whole thing, and maybe I'll find the roots of wokeism. Like, where does it really come from? But wokeism to me is just it's a weapon of mass distraction. Why do I say that? Because wokeism is basically taking it's basically taking liberal or left-wing rhetoric and amplifying it in its most extreme face, to the point where it becomes ridiculous. And when something is amplified to look ridiculous, it becomes an easy target. It becomes a punching bag. So now everything is the woke left, the woke, the woke, the woke, the woke. And if you try to bring up something else and say, guys, take a look at this, you guys are hitting an easy target. Wokeism is an easy target. It's such an easy target. It makes you wonder if it's even coming from a real place. It makes you question if it's even coming from an organic source. It makes you wonder if it's actually just an artificial distraction made up to make us all riled up so that we can attack something and feel like we're, in the culture war. We're winning in the culture war. But to me, it just seems like a giant distraction, and it just seems fake. Like, for example, I remember years ago, there was this video that went viral on all over the internet, Twitter, YouTube, the whole thing. And it was this black girl in with the glasses, and she had, the typical far left appearance that conservatives love to show, to say, look how stupid these people look. But she looked crazy, this woman. I mean, she looked completely out of her mind. And I remember she was doing this presentation, and the presentation was just so ridiculous. Like, there was nothing sophisticated about it. There was nothing intelligent about it at all. It was just her in what looked to be a room that you would rent out to give talks in a hotel building. And she had this big, those, I don't know what you call them. It's like the big paper. She had this canvas. Those canvases that are made up of a whole bunch of pages, and then you turn the big page, and then you write out your little presentation. It was one of those. And she writes on the canvas, white people are demons. Like, white people are demons, and they're devils, and and there's people in the audience. There's like 20 people in the audience, 25 people in the audience. And the whole thing just looks fake. Who the hell is this person? Where did she come from? Who hired her? I mean, what's going on? Like, they're demons. White people are devils, demons, this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, how could anyone have organized this thinking that this is actually helpful or serious or organized or intelligent or logical? There's no way that any human being thought that this was a good idea. I mean, how does this happen? How does this happen? And I really, really thought about it. It just looks fake. But it's an easy target. It's an easy target. Look, real racism on the left, saying white people are demons, blah, 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 blah. And there's a proverb that I remember hearing years ago that I really like to go by. And it goes something like, it's not the devil that you know, it's the devil that you don't know. It's the devil is in the details. And if something is too easy to attack, I tend to stay away. Unless it's the Pope. The Pope is fun to attack. Because I love talking about, the most holy cope of Rome. But if something is just too obvious, too easy, makes you wonder what's going on here. Because it's like a strategy in a war. A lot of times you read about these battles where the enemy is made to think that he is being victorious, that he's advancing, only to realize that he's been hoodwinked and now he's about to be destroyed. It's kind of like the old Soviet tactic of dragging your enemy into your territory, making him think that he's conquering your territory, when in reality, he's just getting farther and farther away from his logistics line, and now he's cut off from supplies, and he's in the middle of enemy territory, and he's about to be vanquished. This is what the Soviets did to the Poles back in the 1920s. That's what they did. They beat the Poles when the Poles thought they were taking over Ukraine. Poland, learn your lesson from the past. You're not going to win against Russia. So that's how I see the whole woke thing. It's like, it just seems fake. That's why I don't really pay attention to it. It's just fake bullshit. And at the same time, in the midst of all of this, you have these political forces in the Western world that are rising up, and these are types of political forces that we haven't seen gain so much momentum since the first half of the 20th century. And you see this it is remarkable in the sense that it's unheard of in our time. But you see this surreal occurrence transpiring, and you're wondering, what's going on here? You have, like, for example, the Freedom Party gaining the most votes in the most recent Austrian election. And the Freedom Party, at one point in time, was considered a fringe party, and they want to bring back the Reich. Andreas Molzer, one of their leaders, has made this very clear. They want to reunite Austria and Germany, and now they got all these votes. It's surreal. It's absolutely surreal, but you don't see mainstream conservative voices saying, This is serious, guys. This is scary. You see them just continuing the same trend that they've been doing for decades. And that is, let's attack the left, let's attack the liberals, let's attack the very same people that we've been attacking since forever. And people just go along with it. People just don't ever ask questions such as, what about the other side? Or are there other people that we should be wary of? Are there other political forces that we should be wary of? And they don't do that. They just want you to do the same thing over and over again. Let's attack these easy targets. Let's attack these targets that are obviously problematic. And there's more to it than that. You know, that's why I don't really trust any famous voice online. Jordan Peterson, Murray, any of these guys. I don't trust them. Douglas Murray and any of these people, because I always ask myself, how did this person get famous? Who does he know? Who are his handlers? I just don't trust any of them, because they don't look at the full picture. They don't say, yeah, the left is a problem, but there's other things that we should also worry about that's rising above the clouds. It's not the clouds, but it's rising above the fog. And we're seeing it in real time. So there's that. Yeah, you see it. You see the AFD. I mean, the AFD is a but they're basically a repackaged Nazi party. And they're growing tremendously. I mean, they are growing tremendously. And they're beating a lot of the mainstream parties. They're beating the Greens. They're beating a lot of these mainstream politicians in Germany. They got first place in first place in Thuringia, second place in Saxony, second place in Brandenburg. I mean, they are a major party now. And one of their leaders is very sympathetic to Nazism. And yes, absolutely. Short Farrell makes a good point. Elon Musk is a cult figure now. Absolutely. And he's talking about robots, buying a robot for tens of thousands of dollars so that it can clean up your house. I mean, guy, this is freaking crazy. And Elon Musk is into transhumanism. He wants to be able to download your consciousness into someone else's brain so that your consciousness will live forever. I mean, it's just a transhumanist cult. And what I find so strange is, for decades, conservatives have been worrying about transhumanism, but then they're revering Elon Musk when Elon Musk is a hardcore transhumanist and he's talking about robots. And what is the future of warfare? The future of warfare is robotics. It's AI. That is the future of warfare. And remember years ago when Elon Musk was saying, oh, I'm so worried about AI. I'm so worried about the future. I'm so scared of the future. And here he is. He's telling people now to go buy a robot to clean up your house. I mean, the guy who was... That's what I'm saying. I never bought into any of this bullshit. If someone says, oh, Elon Musk he's blowing the trumpet. He's trying to make the call. He's warning the world about the dangers of AI. But now he's telling people to go buy a robot to clean up your house. He's talking about downloading your consciousness into other people's brains. Just crazy shit like this, guys. Because it's all deception. See, people, it's amazing. Christians, all these Christians, Catholics, evangelicals, they're following all these big figureheads. Musk, Peterson, Murray. They're following all these big figureheads. And they don't ever look at that verse from the New Testament. Wolves in sheep's clothing. The most basic analogy about evil that's given to us in the New Testament. Wolves in sheep's clothing. What does that mean? A wolf that is cloaked as a sheep. So evil that is cloaked as something that's holy or something that's good and or righteous. This is how evil works. Evil is not going to... See, what they're trying to do is they just want to present to you the wolf. They say, look at these wolves. And we're sheep. We're right? We're sheep. Oh God, look at those wolves. And there's a few sheeps, or sheeps. There's a few sheep who know that there's some wolves in the flock who are dressed up as sheep, and they're saying, guys, there are wolves in sheep's clothing here amongst us. And one of the wolves that is in sheep's clothing is telling you, look at those wolves over there. Look at those wolves over there. Look at that wolf over there. Look at that wolf over here. Oh God, wolf, wolf, wolf. And there's another sheep that's saying, guys, that sheep who's telling you about the wolves that are out in the open, he's actually a wolf. Oh, no, but he's telling us about the wolves. He's warning us about the wolves. He's telling us about the wolves. Oh, but he's warning us. He's saying facts. Yeah, I get he's saying facts, but he's a wolf himself. But he's right in your flock. He's right in your midst. He's gonna devour you. But the sheep don't care. They don't give a damn, because they like this wolf because he looks like a sheep. And so they're falling for it all the time. They're falling for the bullshit. That's why I say, it's like, you have these Christians that are, oh God, like, oh God, oh, I love this guy. Oh, he's so, and you say, he's a wolf. I love Peterson. I love Murray. I love this guy over here. He's great. This guy has a podcast. They're wolves. That's it. They're wolves. And you think they're sheep, but they're actually wolves dressed up as sheep. They're masquerading themselves. And this is the reality of the world. This is the world that we're living in, where they just want you to look at the wolves that are out in the open, but they don't want you to look at the sheeps that are dressed up as wolves. And I'm here to tell you guys, they're wolves in sheep's clothing. But who's listening to me? Almost nobody. You know, that's the sad reality. That's the sad reality. You know, you have this Douglas Murray guy who, oh, he's amazing. He's for the West. He's pro-West. He did a book called The Death of the West. But Murray is a member of what? He's a member of Sodom. And Murray has said that if the government doesn't get rid of this pro-Palestine rally, then the people will have to be called up. And it's going to be very brutal. And he's calling for violence. He's saying the people will have to be violent against people who are pro-Palestine. And you ask yourself, what the hell is happening? You have a guy who's calling for violence, but the right wing thinks he's great. You have Elon Musk talking about downloading people's consciousness and all this transhumanist cultic evil, but they think he's great because he allows for free speech and Twitter. Unless you live in India, by the way. If you live in India, then Elon Musk's philosophy of free speech doesn't apply, because Elon Musk actually abides by the oppressive censorship laws that are being imposed by the Hindu nationalists. Like the Milo guy, exactly. Another great example. You have to stay vigilant. You have to stay vigilant. That's the bottom line. There's so much deception out there, guys. So much deception out there. It's ridiculous. It's a mass deception that is making the world drunk. And by drunk, I mean it is making the world do evil, or convincing the world that they must do evil, while making them think that they're going to do good. And Jesus warned about this. He said, there will be people who will kill you, thinking that they are doing God a service. You can say, well, that's the Muslims, and you would be right. But it's not just the Muslims. You have a lot of different people out there who want to do evil, thinking that they will do God a service. You have these radical rightists who claim to believe in God when they really believe in Satan and Lucifer. They're really members of the ranks of the abysmal world. And they want to kill. And they will call themselves Christians. Just like those Englishmen in the 100 Years' War who would go into France and loot and pillage and rape, and they would go to Mass. And they would say they're doing God a service. Or like the Nazis who would go to the Catholic Church or the Lutheran Church, and they would do massacres. And they thought that they were doing good. They thought they were doing good when they were doing evil. Or you have the Jewish extremists in Israel, the evil, demonic Jewish extremists in Israel. They want to build a third temple, and they want to cause bloodshed. They want to kill Arabs, they want to kill Christians, they want to kill Muslims, they want to butcher people. And you had that guy who is a politician in Israel, Bezalel Smotrich. He said recently that he wants to expand into Syria. He wants Israel to expand its territory into Syria, into Jordan, into Egypt. They want to take territory. And this is a part of what is now known as Judaism. And you can go back to the Judaism of Jesus' day, or the Judaism of Paul's day, and you will see that they were following a book called the War Scroll. And in the War Scroll, it says that the Jews will rise up and they will butcher all of humanity. They will destroy and exterminate all of humanity. And it says in the War Scroll, this is from the time of Paul, around the time of Christ, even close to the time of Christ. It says in the War Scroll that first the Jews will defeat the Semitic peoples around them. They will defeat the Assyrians, the Arabs, the people of Mesopotamia. Then they will go against the children of Ham, the Hamites, the Africans. And for 10 years, they will exterminate the Hamitic people. Then, once the Hamites are done away with, then they will go to the sons of Japheth, the Europeans, and they will wipe out the Europeans. This is what it says in the War Scroll from around the 1st century. And then you hear an Israeli extremist politician saying, Israel has to expand here, it has to expand there, it has to expand here. It's like the same spirit that was alive at the time of Christ, the same abysmal, sinister spirit is there. It's right here amongst us, and it's growing. And then you have these evangelicals talking about, oh, we have to send money to Israel so they can build their third temple. And what's the point of a third temple? Amazingly, you have Protestants who sit there and they accuse other people. They accuse Catholics, or they accuse Eastern Orthodox people of being institutional and legalistic. And, oh, that's an institution. And I don't follow Christianity. I follow Jesus. I don't follow religion. I follow faith. But these are the same people, right? They'll say, oh, it's not about religion. It's about a relationship with God. And the Catholic Church is an evil institution and blah, blah, blah. These are the same people who say we must help the Jews build the third temple. Well, who's institutional? Who's being institutional? Who's being legalistic? Who's following a religion here? When you want to help the Jews rebuild a temple that literally God destroyed. A temple of which Christ said, every single stone will fall down. And they will revere the city of Jerusalem, even though Christ said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if only you were to follow me like chicks follow their mother and go under their mother's wing, but you have chosen not to follow me, so you will be devastated. And that's what happened. The devastation of Jerusalem, the devastation of the temple, the destruction of the temple. And Christ said, bring the temple down and I will rebuild it in 3 days. He was talking about himself. He was saying, if you kill me, I'm going to revive after 3 days. But then you have these very people who say we need to rebuild a temple. We need to rebuild the temple. But Christ is the temple. I thought you guys followed Jesus, not a religion. I thought you guys are not about religion, but about a relationship with Jesus, and that you want to rebuild the temple when Christ literally said that he is the temple. It makes zero sense. But there is deception throughout, and you have to be wary of it. Deception throughout, be it Christian Zionism, be it right-wing fanaticism, be it the modern-day state of Roman Catholicism. I mean, there's just massive deception. You have people who want you to think that the Pope is Orthodox, even though the Pope has said there's many different ways to Jesus. Hinduism brings us to God. Islam brings us to God. Judaism brings us to God, which is destruction, is evil. It's false. And Christ said, I am the way, and anyone who says that there is another way is a thief who comes to destroy and to kill and to steal. And you have Catholics who say, oh, no, the Pope is fine. He's fine. He's great. He's great. He's great. They don't follow the Pope of Rome. Well, they do follow the Pope of Rome, but they also follow the cope of Rome. They're coping all the time. They're coping all the time. And you have these big right-wing figureheads. They want you to just focus on the left, the woke left. But what about the other picture here? What about the rest of the picture? What about the rise of right-wing evil, right-wing fanaticism in Europe, right-wing fanaticism in Israel? Those that worship earthly Jerusalem are just worshiping another beast. I agreed. Absolutely agree. If the masses believe in something 10 to 1, it's on the wrong side. Absolutely. Absolutely. And even Jesus tells us this. He says, if men follow you, if too many people like you, you're doing something wrong. Satan, in the form of Archangel Gabriel, appeared in Muhammad's dream. Well, because Islam is a Christian heresy. It tries to come across as true Christianity. It's a heresy like Mormonism. I hate the Jews who say never again and do everything possible to make everyone hate them. Yeah. Well, you have Yishai Fleischer, a famous Jewish activist, who saw a video of a Norwegian Nazi giving the Sieg Heil. And he's like, oh, this is fine. The way is narrow. Absolutely. That's how I feel, guys. People say, yesterday somebody sent me an email. They said, what do you think of this guy? Somebody I never heard of. What was the name of the guy? Hold on, let me look up real quick. His last name is Cook. Bennett, was it Bennett Cook? Beckett Cook. That's the name of this guy. And somebody asked me about him yesterday. Somebody wrote me and said, hey, Ted, have you heard of this guy named Beckett Cook? And if so, what do you think of him? So I told him, I said, I've never heard of Beckett Cook. And this guy says to me, well, he's an ex-homosexual, former homosexual. And I said, listen, if he's saying something that's true, it's true, right? If truth is spoken, it's spoken. I said, but if you see any red flags, don't ignore them. So I took the time to watch a video of this guy, Beckett Cook, and he's got a podcast, 157 plus thousand subscribers. And I watched a little bit of him, and this guy says he's an ex-homosexual, but he's now, he's found the Lord. But you watch him talking in his podcast, and he's still talking like he's a member of Sodom. I'm high and blah 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 and all this crap. And I'm thinking, this guy, I don't trust this guy as far as I can spit. So I wrote this dude and I said, I don't trust this guy at all. He still talks like he's a member of Sodom. And the guy said, yeah, I recognize that. I mean, there's just so much of this deception nowadays. Oh, this guy is. What do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? It's like, well, look at the red flags. Look at the flags. Anyway, guys, let's do some musical recommendations. I have nothing else to say. Yeah, Milo, exactly. If anyone has any musical recommendations, let me know, and we'll play them. And that's it. We'll wrap it up from here because I've talked long enough. What are we to do? Nothing you can do. People are going to do what they're going to want. What they're going to want to do. This Land is Mine by Nina Paley. Oh God, is this some of the, is this that Boy Scout song. This land is my land or something. Is that what this says? This land is mine. Is this Nina Paley? Here we go. Oh, this is a different song. 3.6 million views. Yeah. Yeah, okay. After Forever, My Choice. Yes, I will upload sections of this video later. After Forever, My Choice. Okay. As soon as I hear that weird shift that a lot of musicians do, I'm sorry, it's just not for me. Matthew Field, I think they call this love. Oh boy, is this some weird stuff? They say I'm out. I'm not interested in listening to something that sounds like it's from the 1950s. Milk Inc. This sounds promising. Techno song? It's like an old school techno song. I'm lost in the storm, fire in the skies, and no love in your eyes. Now my heart is torn. I'm lost in the storm of your lies. Lost in the storm. It sounds like a early 2000s techno song. It's not bad. It's just Dean Martin, Volare. Is that a famous Italian song? Volare. Volare. Oh. So this is what everyone thinks of Italy when they think about going to Italy. They think it's all going to be this song. Cantare. Oh. Let's fly way up to the clouds, away from the maddening crowds. We can sing in the glow of a star that I know of, where lovers enjoy peace of mind. Let us leave the confusion and all this illusion behind. Just like birds of a feather, a rainbow together we'll find. Volare, oh, e cantare, oh. I don't like this music. I think it's annoying. No, this is actually based on a very famous Italian song called Volare. This is an American version of it, but it's based on an Italian song. I don't really like this music. I think it's just. I think maybe back in those days, Dean Martin was considered cool because that was music in those days. But nowadays, people who listen to this music, I guess they feel like a nostalgia for the past or something. Guys, it's over. I'm sorry, Italy is not what it used to be. Italy is not a place that Americans can go to be viewed as some sort of a rare animal in a zoo. Oh, American. Italy is now a place you go to get robbed because people will rip you off because you don't speak Italian, and they will try to take advantage of you. And no one really gives a shit if you're an American unless you have money. Let me show you guys a video. I actually want to show you this video to you guys. I think this video is hilarious. Real Italian food in Sicily, guys. It's not all pizza and pasta. I can assure you of that. Cringe! Yes, I agree. Yes, listen, if you go to Italy expecting to be seen as a unicorn, expect to be seen as a nuisance.
This is Max Sinestra. I finally made it to Sicily. I'm in Palermo, and today...
So what do they got over there in Palermo? Let's see here. This is some kind of... I don't know what that is. What's a croissant or something? I don't know what that... Oh, look, octopus.
Allora mezzo, come vuoi, compà. Che spettacolo, gigante, oh.
Boiled
Quanto fa
octopus.
quello tutto sano? Quanto pesa?
Boiled rubber.
Intorno a un chilo? Sì. Mamma mia, unbelievable what we find inside
Boiled
the market.
octopus, rubber.
Certo.
700 grams.
Kilo of octopus, boiled. We're gonna get half of it because we're going to eat something more. And lightly seasoned with olive oil, salt, and lemon.
Wow. Look at all that fizz from the boiling water.
Here we are. This is ours. Boom.
Delicious.
Mamma mia, fresh seafood in Palermo at Ballaro Market.
Olio, limone e pepe?
Senza pepe.
Senza pepe.
Olive oil. That makes all the difference.
Grazie mille. 10.
There you go. 10 euros. 10 euros for this for rubber.
Limone? Lo strizzo. Grazie.
On a paper plate on top of that. So 10 euros, that's like what, 12 USD? 11 something? Let's just say close to 12 USD. I pay less for just a burger, fries, and a soda with free refills in the United States. So I'm going to pay more than what I would pay for a burger, fries, and a free refill in the US so that I can get some rubber on a paper plate. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Little lemon. Okay, let's try it out in front of him.
Oh my God.
Mamma mia.
Mamma mia, mamma mia. Rubber on a paper plate.
Oh wow.
Let me pretend I didn't get ripped off.
Explosion of flavor.
Explosion.
Fresh.
Explosion of flavor. Oh my God. If I don't do anything, they're going to kill me. They're going to throw me into water with my feet cemented with concrete.
Chewy, lemony, olive oil.
Less than $4 for McDonald's. Hot damn. Hold on, but you're not talking about real McDonald's. You're talking about the Russian McDonald's, which looks just as good as the American McDonald's. But $4, hot damn, that's a good deal. Shit.
Oh no, it's really nice. Buono, complimenti.
Buono, buono. Mamma mia, mamma mia. Ragazzi, ragazzi.
This is proper street food.
He looks North African. Reminder that Italy was once invaded by southern Italy, Sicily, Malta. All these areas were actually conquered by North Africans. Just letting you guys know, Malta was once controlled by Carthaginians. So yeah, there's a lot of history there. There are even some people who would argue that southern Italy is not even really Europe. It's basically just an extension of the Middle East.
Seafood, all fried calamari. Alici anchovies stuffed, called alici alla beccafico. This is just so cool. Oh my god, I'm in love with Sicily.
Delicious.
Ciao, buongiorno. Frizzola? Che cos'è?
Sono le parti che rimangono attaccate alle ossa del vitello.
The bones
Panino?
of a baby cow.
Panino o con o senza il pane?
Mezzo. Si può avere mezzo?
Facciamo così. Gradisci pepe o peperoncino?
Peperoncino.
Well, this looks okay. It's like deep fried stuff. Okay, hold on. What else do we got here? This is a seafood place. Okay. What is this? Why is the internet so slow? Okay, you got a whole market of fresh produce. This is fine. What is this? What is this? What the hell is that?
Grazie.
What the hell is that? Hold on. What is this?
Buongiorno.
This, by the way, looks really beautiful. I mean, just this. You see this everywhere in Italy. It looks so aesthetically pleasing. The alleyway, the old buildings, the farmer's market nearby.
Stighiola?
Sticchiola.
What is this? What is this? What is this? What the hell is that?
Io
Intestines?
sono la melone di tutti i pantaloni.
What is this? Ugh. What is this? Is this intestines or something?
Grazie. We could miss another iconic Palermo street food, Stighiola veal guts wrap up.
I knew it was guts. And I'm sorry, call me a stickler, but I don't like the hands thing. I don't know what the hands thing is. I don't know where this guy's hands have been. His hands are getting way too intimate with the food. Look at this. Rubbing it around like that. I don't know where your hands have been. Where the hell have your hands been?
Grazie. We could miss another iconic Palermo street food, Stighiola veal guts wrap up in its own intestine
The guts
and
of a baby cow.
cook over charcoal kebab style, lightly seasoned with salt and pepper. Oh my god, so chewy. The char flavor, you can really taste it. It's very similar to cockroach or
Paper plate because they're cheap. That's the problem with Italians. They're so cheap over there. They're trying to rip you off. I want to know how much you paid for this bullshit. They're always trying to rip you off over there. Everyone's trying to rob you. When I was in Spain, it wasn't like that. I got food super cheap in Spain. In Italy, they're always trying to rip you off. Like always trying to get a high price for some bullshit. And on top of that, they don't even give you a proper plate. They give you a freaking paper plate. Here's a paper plate. And of course, there's some liquid on the bottom there. I don't know what. It just looks gross.
cocorezzi. It's a bit bitter and it's so creamy. È buona?
Posto ragazzi.
Bravo, grazie mille. I think while in Palermo or in Sicily in general, you must try
Where's the
stighiola.
Domino's pizza? That's what I'd be saying. I mean, where's Pizza Hut? Ain't no Pizza Hut here. Okay, what else do they got?
Famous arancina.
Arancina is very good. I had arancina when I was in Rome. It's a risotto that's deep fried. Now, what the hell is this? What the hell is this shit?
Panelle e crocchè before.
What is that? What is this?
That's the lung.
Oh, this is lungs. I'm gonna go travel 1,000 miles away to get robbed by buying some overpriced lung meat. We're gonna get some overpriced lung meat, everybody.
They have lung, trachea and spleen. Everything is boiled.
Spleen.
E sarebbe la
Delicious.
milza del vitello.
Allora, questa è milza con noi perché
In water. In water. Look at that frothing up. Look at that boiled up spleen. Long, so delicious. I just hate living in America where I get free refills, French fries, hamburger, deep fried chicken, jalapeno pop. I just hate living in America. I'd much rather go to a different country where I get overpriced lean spleen, lungs, and water. Lung soup.
Ok. E bollite tutto.
Sì, già è bollito. Questa è una parte di trachea.
Mazza.
Trachea. Such a delightful succulent piece of meat. Where's the bay leaf? Oh, look at that. Here is some boiled lung with some spleen. Boiled in water. And then we're just going to toss this boiled ass lung on a bun that they don't even toast. They don't even take the time to toast the bun. They're so cheap, these people. Here's a bun, a soft bun. It's going to get all soggy in 15 seconds. Ooh, look at that. Extra water. Soggy bun.
Grazie mille.
How much did that cost? How much did that cost?
Grazie. And we also get that one. Classic. With panelle and croquette. Grazie mille. I'm about to try one of the most extreme sandwiches here in Sicily. Panica meusa. So sandwich with the spleen, trachea, and the lung of the veal. The smell is intense, eh? Buon appetito.
Smell. I can imagine. Bellissima, mamma mia, delicioso. Mamma mia, ragazzi.
Nice. Oh,
He
I
doesn't
like it.
even like it. He doesn't even like it. He's lying. This guy's a liar. Look at that face. I know when someone really likes food. I know when someone loves food. When someone loves food, they can't control themselves. They go, oh my God, that's so good. Damn, that's good. The way that this guy looks, he looks disappointed. So he eats the spleen. Here is the reality sinking in. It tastes like shit. More shit. Tastes like shit. Let me lie in front of the camera.
It's nice.
Yeah, this guy's a liar. What a liar.
Oh, I like it. Oh, complimenti, eh?
Oh, well done. Thank you so much.
Buonissimo. It's not strong at all, actually. It's very well prepared, lightly seasoned. It's pretty oily, but it's nice. They've been open for 4 generations. Wow, this is an institution. And now,
I don't know what the hell this is. This looks like some garbage. I don't know what this is.
sandwich with croquette and panelle, the chickpea flowers with
What
the
else do they have?
parsley.
What
I
is
think.
this shit? And more spleen, more lung.
Mamma mia. Just so nice. He's explaining to us how they make panica meusa, how they cook it.
What
They
else is
just
there?
add the strutto, which is
What else do they have?
Santo Stefano di Camastra. This is a tiny little village right in front of the sea, a jewel. We came.
What is this?
Salad.
I mean, I guess this doesn't look too bad. Probably extremely overpriced. Oh, what's this? This looks good. And
they're delicious.
This looks really good. Now, I think he likes that one. That sounds very authentic. What are the comments? Oh, it tastes amazing. I moved to Italy from Canada a few years ago. I lived in Palermo for 2 years. It's a beautiful, magical city. It deserves so much more tourism. Thank you for this beautiful video. It made me dream of all the incredible food, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Anyway, guys. Is this liver they're trying to serve? That's the liver. Yeah. I'm interested. Let's watch the new Jesse Eisenberg trailer. Spleen e linguine. Ted's commentary is killing me. I'm glad, man. It's just overpriced garbage. That's all it is. It looks nasty, absolutely. Anyway, guys, I think I'm done here. I've been serving. What was it, 3 hours of... I think that's enough. I've talked enough. Hope you guys have had a fun enough stream. It was fun. Hope you guys do well for your weekend. And you guys just heard some theology.